to this shooting, learn more about the identities of the National Guard troops. And Kristi Noem putting out a new tweet, and this is it. She says, please join me in praying for the two National Guardsmen who were shot moments ago in Washington, D.C. DHS is working with local law enforcement to gather more information. So what we really could use at this point is an update from police. Often with breaking situations like this, they will announce a staging area where all the media will go. Perhaps that will happen in the next couple of hours. We still see law enforcement arriving at the scene, so they may not have all the details to provide us just yet beyond what we have shared with you so far. But the latest information is two National Guard troops shot, and we are waiting to learn more about the circumstances that led up to that shooting. We understand the White House was under a brief lockdown while this was all going on. It's unclear if that lockdown has been lifted. We've seen officers on the ground. We've seen officers by air in choppers circling the area. It's unclear whether they're looking for another suspect or if they are just taking a wider view of the scene to make sure they're not missing anything, as this investigation is just in its early stages. So we have three pictures up for you, and you can see from various points of view here just the volume of law enforcement that is now there. I believe this is near 17th and I. Make sure I have that correct. 17th and I, near the Farragut Metro. It's just an enormous showing of law enforcement responding to the scene there as they try to figure out what happened there just around 2:20 this afternoon. Okay. All right, so as that camera, I was trying to make out exactly what the camera was zooming in on at the top of the screen. It's hard for me to see right here, but it could be just a line of more media who are arriving at the scene and getting a different vantage point of the scene as they stay beyond the yellow tape there. So again, if you're just joining us, two National Guard members, actually it looks like National Guard members are there gathered as this investigation is in its early stages. A really shocking day for people. A lot of folks already on holiday break, not in their offices, so the traffic could actually be a whole lot worse in terms of getting around downtown. But this is probably the last thing people were expecting the day before Thanksgiving, to hear that two National Guard troops have been shot, now listed in critical condition. We're waiting to learn more about those officers, how long they'd been in the city, where they were from, if they were D.C. troops or if they were from perhaps another state. All details we're working aggressively right now to figure out. And as you allow me to just take a quick pause here, I am scanning to look for any other information that is just crossing the wires that I can share with you, as I'm actively searching all of our platforms here for new information. DC Fire and EMS is now saying 3 people have been taken to the hospital. We don't know anything about the third one, so that's consistent with what we've been reporting for about the last hour here when we first broke this news on here on WJLA 24/7 News, and now with our audience here on ABC7. Agents from U.S. Secret Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Explosives are on the scene, which is customary for a federal investigation like this. So you're going to see all hands on deck respond to this. Every agency, every 3-letter agency in this town will be part of this investigation to figure out a motive, learn more about the suspect, if this was something the suspect had been plotting, if this person had any type of violent history, if there were any red flags that would indicate that such a plan was in the making. All questions that investigators will be trying to understand to get a better picture of what led to today's tragic shooting of 2 National Guard soldiers. And as we've heard, the White House has been briefed. All of the president's cabinet members have been briefed on the situation as well. Still no response from the president directly on this, but we'll be checking the social media for an update there. We know right now he is in West Palm to observe the Thanksgiving holiday. So we see these officers show up with these long weapons, not something that we're necessarily accustomed to seeing here in the nation's capital, at least not this level of intensity. About a little over 1,000 National Guard troops from out of state are in D.C. at this time. A lot we still don't know about these particular troops that were shot today. But we do know that they're in critical condition. This whole situation is causing a lot of disruption for travel, but also a lot of people and media. This is becoming a national and international story as we cover this here for you. I don't know if we still have Christian available to give us any final words from his scene. Okay, I'm hearing that Christian's not available right now. He's currently gathering some more information, so we'll allow him to do that. We're going to be leading with this story. We'll have a team of reporters on it with the very latest information for you at 4 o'clock. You can join us for 4 o'clock news, and this will probably take over our coverage from 4 to 6:30. And World News Tonight, no doubt, will be tracking this story and any developments that come about between now and then. WJLA.com is also where you can go to continue to monitor live streams of these camera angles that we have provided for you here, as well as our YouTube page. We'll be providing any updates that we get on YouTube, on our WJLA.com website, as well as our app. So as we enter the final 2 minutes here before we wrap our live coverage on 24/7 and ABC 7, here is the latest information that we have. 2 National Guard soldiers have been shot. They're in critical condition. The suspect is in custody. President Trump is not in the area. He's in West Palm. He's been alerted of the situation. He's been briefed. No public statement from him just yet. His cabinet has put out statements. Kristi Noem, the spokesperson for the White House, Caroline Leavitt, has put out statements saying this is a tragic day, a tragedy for these soldiers to be shot. But we still don't have a whole lot of details. Okay, I just paused there to get some new information from my producer. We're going to send it up to our other studio, Studio A, where our Scott Thuman is standing by to take over our coverage from here. Scott?
from the White House. What we don't know at this hour is if there is still any sort of threat looming, if they are on the lookout for anyone else, or if there's one person that has been deemed at this point a suspect and shooter that has been taken down is the lone person that they need to be concerned about. Our Christian Flores is live on the scene. We want to get out to him. Christian, where exactly are you in relation to this shooting? What do you know?
Yeah, right now we are on 18th and H Street Northwest, I believe, just a few blocks from the White House, like you mentioned. And it's just been a chaotic scene ever since we got here. Just one of the more intense scenes I've been to since I've worked here. And right now, like you mentioned, we're hearing that 2 National Guard troops have been shot and are in critical condition. DC Fire and EMS telling us that a total of 3 people were taken to the hospital. Now, sources had also told us that the suspect is in custody, potentially one of the 3 taken to the hospital. But right now, you're just seeing Secret Service police trying to manage the traffic. I mean, just a number of blocks are taped off. In fact, we had to park about 4 or 5 blocks away just to get to this point. And we're still pretty far away from the shooting scene itself. Right now, you see at the end of the block, you see quite a few MPD. It looks like a K-9 unit is here. We're seeing Secret Service police. Earlier today, we saw, or just a few minutes ago, we saw, I believe it was a Border Patrol officer making his way down to the scene. Anytime you have a shooting, you're going to get a number of city blocks taped off. But when it's a shooting this close to the White House, it's not a surprise to see just how hectic the scene is and just how much the officers here are really trying to keep the traffic flowing, not just to get the traffic flowing, but to keep the scene clear. I mean, we're still in the early stages of the investigation. This just happened just a little bit ago, just a few hours ago this afternoon. And obviously, the investigation is still going on.
Real fast, we do need to point out, as you're showing us some great shots here of how it is a tense scene. You've got law enforcement armed still being very careful with making sure that there's no other threat. We need to point out that the president is not there. He is in Florida. He left yesterday to head to Florida. And the White House spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, telling us that he has been informed. They're keeping tabs on everything. But it is a part of the security apparatus that always exists around the White House. You have multiple law enforcement agencies, and it looks like we're seeing them there. You have, of course, MPD that's always in the area, but also Secret Service. You've got U.S. Park Police because of Lafayette Square right there. Are you seeing any sort of really physical action right now where they're running one way or the other, or does everyone seem like they've got the situation under control? Because it's important as we try to figure out whether or not this is an area that's still under some sort of threat.
I mean, right at this moment, we're not seeing a lot of running around, but just minutes ago, I imagine when we were on live earlier, you could have seen officers kind of running around, trying to get to the scene, trying to secure the scene. Earlier on, down here along Pennsylvania Avenue, I'm going to tilt our camera over there. We're just right by Pennsylvania Avenue. We saw a parade of MPD cars make their way down Pennsylvania Avenue. You see that whole street blocked off. It looks like by Secret Service police as well. And earlier today, we also saw an MPD helicopter up in the air just hovering around. We actually kind of heard it following us a little bit as we were driving down kind of along this path, trying to secure the scene. You know, there's still a lot of questions. I mean, we know the 2 National Guard troops have been shot and are in critical condition, but we're still waiting to figure out a lot of questions like why exactly this happened and, you know, what exactly led up to this. But about 20 minutes ago, we were across the street. If you're talking about really tense moments, we were across the street, and then you might have seen live on 7 News and 24/7, Secret Service police officer just yelling at everybody, get across the street, get out of here, and then they put up this yellow tape to just secure the scene. I'm sure you just saw a K-9 sniffing around here too, but at this moment, it's relatively calm, if you can believe it, compared to what we just saw maybe 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And keeping in mind, of course, that when it comes to the National Guardsmen, a lot in this area. Earlier this month, there was a report that there were still about 2,300 that were in the city. Remember, this is all part of what President Trump had made a surge in law enforcement to try and tamp down crime in the D.C. area. And there have been instances where people have expressed real displeasure with the idea of the National Guard being brought into Washington, D.C. They have certainly experienced their share of negative feedback, to say the least. Also important to note, and Christian pointed this out, but 2 National Guardsmen reported in critical condition right now. I know that there are a couple of hospitals that they could have brought them to pretty quickly. GW not terribly far away. But that area is always ready for some sort of medical emergency, should that be the case, just by the proximity of being near the White House. Christian, what are you hearing, if anything, as far as lockdowns? There were some reports earlier crossing the feed here showing that buildings like the Treasury Department, which is very close by, right next door to the White House, had immediately gone into a lockdown as well, and that staff members were told to secure themselves in their offices, perhaps get behind heavy furniture, make sure that they were taking every precaution that they've been taught over the years for active shooter situations. Any idea if areas are locked down, if we're seeing some sort of added precautions still underway?
Well, as far as hearing of any official lockdowns, it's something we're still working to find out. But, we have seen people try to get to, their office buildings here. I mean, we're in a busy office building area. I mean, so close to the White House. And you had officers, hey, get back, telling everyone get back, get out of the scene. Don't cross the police tape. So we have seen quite a bit of that. But as far as official lockdowns, it's something we're still working to find out. But like you mentioned, I mean, we're not only close to the White House, we're close to a lot of buildings for federal agencies. So whenever you have a shooting situation, especially a situation where National Guard troops are shot, you can imagine that there's got to be some protocols as far as making sure the employees in those buildings are safe. But that's something we'll keep a close eye for. But like you saw, I'm sure you saw some of the scenes here. We see a canine kind of sniffing around here. If there is any sort of lockdown, or at least, some restriction of keeping people out of this area, it does seem like at this point, especially with sources saying a suspect's in custody, it's more just to keep the scene clear so the investigators can do their jobs at this point.
Yeah, and they do. I'm sure they're advising people to stay out of that area, but you're talking about a day before Thanksgiving. A lot of people trying to get out of the city or get home from a day of work, and those areas are busy, even on the slowest of occasions. So right now, that section going to be just chaos to try and get through. We want to get some of the reaction that's already pouring in now to our newsroom. So let's get over to my colleague and anchor, Victoria Sanchez, who's been covering this as well, and she's got a look at what we're seeing. Victoria?
Yeah, so what we know is that President Trump is not at the White House. He did just post on Truth Social, which you can see has been retweeted on X, but he put the animal that shot the two National Guardsmen are, with both being critically wounded, are now in two separate hospitals, is also severely wounded. So the president is saying that the suspect is also wounded and that they will pay a steep price. We also have Kristi Noem, secretary here. She says that join me in praying for the two National Guardsmen who were shot moments ago in D.C. And of course, because this is near the White House, we have multiple law enforcement agencies. We have MPD that say there's a critical incident and to avoid the area. We also have the National Guardsmen who were not involved in this shooting. We have Secret Service. We have Park Police. Lots of agencies that are swarming the area, which is why if you do have any business in the downtown area near the White House, I would avoid it. Another thing that I want to let you know about is that some of the videos that are being posted online here, we did see that this did happen near the metro station with a lot of glass that looks like, from the video that I've seen, it looks like a part of a bus enclosure was shot, and so that was all over the place there. Get two National Guardsmen, both being reported by the president as being critically wounded right now. We're going to update this with some more of the reaction that we get online, but for now, let me send it over back to you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria, and I'm sure that reaction will continue to pour in as we give you yet another live look here. And Christian Flores is on the move because we're going to get a different angle of all of this. But what you see on your screen there is just one of the multitudes of unmarked government vehicles there with lights on now, because this is an all hands on deck reaction from not only, as we pointed out, local law enforcement like MPD, but also federal. And right now, in the midst of all this breaking news, another bit of breaking news. Very sad to report now that we have gotten word that one of those National Guard members has died. We've got that confirmation from Virginia's governor, but West Virginia's governor, that one of those National Guardsmen is now dead. Again, two of them were shot. Both were transported in critical condition. One has not made it. So, everyone's going to take a breath and just kind of let this sink in for a second. This is a difficult day in Washington, D.C., to say the least. As we look at the scene, important to note that while there is a lot of angst and a lot of discontent from some people who don't want the National Guard in their city, and we have seen rebellious actions against them, it's a large contingency. It's reportedly around 2,300 who have been here from other states all around the country, who have been assigned the task of trying to cut down on crime in Washington, D.C. Their role has ranged everything from doing beautification, in other words, even helping pick up and clean up around parks, to then going to difficult neighborhoods and walking the beat, so to speak, making sure that they are seen and that they are a presence to try and deter any sort of criminal acts. This one taking place in broad daylight, just before 3 p.m. today, where you have these two shot. And we've got some more reaction coming in right now. Let's get back over to Victoria real quickly. Victoria?
All right, Scott, as you say, one of the National Guardsmen did pass away. There is a tweet from the West Virginia governor who is saying that the two members of the National Guard were from his state. These are two West Virginia National Guard members. He wrote, "Denise and I are devastated by the news that two members of the West Virginia National Guard were shot earlier today in Washington, D.C. According to reports on the ground, one did not survive. The other was taken to the hospital." So we now know that the National Guardsmen, not from D.C., but from West Virginia. And Scott, as you were saying, we've had multiple states send their National Guard members here to Washington, D.C. for beautification, for also a ramp up of federal law enforcement in the nation's capital. And now two West Virginia National Guardsmen were shot. One did not survive. Scott?
Yeah, and as we talk about that, Victoria, and the fact that these Guard members were from West Virginia, there's reporting here that about 160 members of the West Virginia National Guard had volunteered to remain in Washington, D.C. for support and patrols around the city entering this holiday cycle. Again, this is some secondhand reporting here, but it's that they actually helped set up for a Thanksgiving meal through the Joint Task Force District of Columbia. This is a collaborative unit focused on public safety and cleanliness here. So again, a difficult situation. Obviously, there was a service member who had put out a message for the holidays on behalf of the West Virginia National Guard. They've been posting videos and making sure that they had recorded messages. And then, of course, this happens just the day before Thanksgiving. Yeah, okay, so Tom Rousey is joining us here in the studio as well. He says now that the report is that both of those National Guards members have passed away. Is that correct, Tom?
Morrissey of West Virginia.
Okay, so according to the governor, now both of those Guards members. So just a terrible day here in Washington, D.C. We're also looking for a lot more about what exactly is the current status of threat. Is this the one person, the suspect that they have reportedly shot and have taken custody of, alive? Is that person the only person involved in this shooting, or were there more than one shooter? We're going to take a closer look once Christian Flores, our reporter on the scene, moves around to a different location and gives us another angle. But right now, what you're looking at, for those who are just joining us, is Farragut Park. This is the square that is just about a block and a half away from the White House complex. It is right next to the Farragut North Metro Station, and that's something we'll check in with Tom on shortly, because he handles a lot of transportation reporting for us. We'll find out what this means for Metro passengers who may be trying to get in and out of the city right now, and if trains have had to stop at all or stopped going through there or just kept going through. But what you are seeing, aside from all these flashing lights, are many members of multiple law enforcement agencies. Remember, there's something like 30 law enforcement agencies all throughout the city when you add them up. And there had to be an instant reaction from just about all of them. And we also are trying to find out whether or not there have been any more lockdowns, or if any agencies or departments, buildings, or a lot of hotels in that area, a lot of retail when you start getting along that K Street corridor. And so we'll be finding out just how secure that area is, as police tape certainly is going to be up for a long time, and those streets are going to be shut down for a long time as well. But the difficult news that we have gotten so far, of course, is that two National Guard members now declared dead after that shooting. We do have a new statement from West Virginia's governor saying, quote, "It is with great sorrow that we can confirm both members of the West Virginia National Guard who were shot earlier today in Washington, D.C. have passed away from their injuries. These brave West Virginians lost their lives in the service of their country. We are in ongoing contact with federal officials. As this investigation continues, our entire state grieves with their families, their loved ones, and the Guard community. West Virginia will never forget their service or their sacrifice, and we will demand full accountability for this horrific act. And that, of course, perhaps the most appropriate way to describe what we have seen here today, unfolding not far from the White House, taking place just before 3 o'clock this afternoon when shots rang out and 2 National Guard members were struck. Both were transported in critical condition, both of them now declared dead. As we continue to follow what's taking place in Washington, important to note, again, if we're repeating ourselves, it's because we have a new audience joining us every moment. President Trump not at the White House when this took place. He had already traveled yesterday, last evening, down to Florida. We can give you a look here as J.D. Vance looks like he is making an appearance for some scheduled remarks. Let's listen in. Is this, Abby, I'm talking to my producer here. Abby, is this?
White House just a couple of hours ago.
It's not related to the shooting yet, but let's
we
listen in.
Don't know the motive. There's a lot that we haven't yet figured out, but what we do know is that a couple of National Guardsmen were injured in the line of duty. And first of all, I want everybody who's a person of faith to say a prayer for those 2 National Guardsmen, that they're able to spend Thanksgiving with their families instead of losing their lives, because I understand they're still in pretty tough condition. But I think it's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America. And as a person who goes into work every single day in that building and knows that there are a lot of people who wear the uniform of the United States Army, let me just say very personally, thank them for what they're doing. We're grateful to them, and we're praying that they're going to be safe and they're going to spend Thanksgiving with their families. God bless them. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the business of the Army and about what you're doing and about why it's important to the United States of America.
Okay, so
and why we
there
are
you
proud
heard
of you.
Vice President J.D. Vance. He was scheduled to make unrelated remarks, but wanted to take a moment to acknowledge what exactly happened there. It sounds like the breaking news that those 2 Guard members have died had not been translated to the Vice President, or he had not been told just yet. We're also seeing that FBI Director Kash Patel now on scene. It is an all-hands federal response, as you would imagine, and we're continuing to look at alerts not only with the ATF saying it is on scene to assist, MPD, the FBI, the Secret Service, U.S. Park Police, and on and on. This area is always congested. Right now, it is that times 100 as you take a look. These streets shut down. If you plan on going anywhere into the city, or you're trying to leave the city to start the long holiday weekend, you will have to be very patient. This is going to be a mess for a lot of people in a lot of directions for quite some time. We'll state again that the White House has been informed. The president had a response. Victoria Sanchez, my fellow anchor, has brought us the president's words, and we're continuing to get some more reaction into the White House. Let's get over to Victoria. She's got some more reaction tonight.
Yeah, Scott, as you said, the vice president had not heard yet that both National Guardsmen had passed away from their injuries. Now, these 2 Guardsmen, we're not sure if they're both males, male, female, but they are from West Virginia. The governor did post on X saying that they had passed away from their injuries. This is some of the reaction that we're getting right now. The first one, of course, coming from President Donald Trump, calling the suspect, an animal who shot the National Guardsmen. And right here, this is where the governor, Patrick Morrisey of West Virginia, he is saying that it's with great sorrow we can confirm both members of the West Virginia National Guard who were shot did pass away from their injuries. We're seeing video from, I believe this is from John Gonzalez. We have video showing just the response to this. Some of the other video that we've seen posted on social media show large military presence because we have National Guard members. We have FBI, Secret Service, Park Police. The list goes on and on, all near the White House for this. And now that we know that this is a double homicide, this area is going to be locked down for many, many hours, if not into tomorrow, which is Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, these 2 National Guards members will not be going home because they were shot around 3 o'clock today near the metro station. I'm going to send it over back to Scott Thuman and Michelle Marsh with the latest that we're getting.
Yeah, we want to get over to Rebecca Turco now, another one of our reporters who is at GW Hospital, which is where we believe both of the guardsmen have been transported, but perhaps also the suspect. Rebecca, what can you tell us from where you are now?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a very busy scene. I want to step to the side so you can kind of see what we're looking at. We got here a little bit ago, plenty of police cars, of course, ambulances because we're by the emergency entrance, but we're suspecting that the police presence to the side of us really is because of the situation at hand. So we're working to learn more, obviously, but as you said, at this point, we do know that the National Guard troops are dead, and we are waiting to learn which hospitals they're at, but it is believed that at least some of them are here, probably at least one of them. And we do know that the president posted on social media that they were sent to different hospitals. So we're working to learn more. And of course, we're working to learn more about the 3rd victim in all of this, how that person is doing at this point. But, you know, certainly it's definitely a very busy area. And of course, this is a big deal. We're starting to see more media make their way to the area just because of the significance of something like this. So we are going to work to learn more details. We've been pressing police, pressing the fire department to see if they can give us any updates. We'll let you know when we learn more. Scott?
Yeah, Rebecca, and we will check in. Make sure you flag us if you take note of anything, because we are curious whether or not that 3rd victim is actually the suspect. We don't know. We know 3 people shot. 2, as we pointed out, the National Guards members who have now died, and 1 other person, but we don't know if that is the suspect or the shooter in this case. So we're still waiting information and confirmation from police on that, but we have seen some images from immediately after where there was a scramble on the street, perhaps to secure the suspect. It looked like multiple law enforcement agencies were there very quickly, as well as National Guard members, which would make sense because they are posted all around the city, and of course, clearly in this instant, with MPD saying that the scene is secured. Joined now by Michelle Marsh, my co-anchor here. You've been on this from the very minute that we broke in. Just a dark day here in D.C. The scene looks like it's only going to grow as we continue to find out perhaps where the shooting started, where the suspect may have been taken, or where he was caught or shot. A lot still to learn. Yeah,
this all initially hit the wires, and our news team started to work on this story around 2:20, just to take people back if they were just joining us. That's when we got the initial reports that there had been a shooting. Sadly, the update now this hour is that it is now a deadly shooting. 2 National Guard members have been killed, and this is having far-reaching impacts in our region, not just in D.C. If you have loved ones who are arriving via DCA, Reagan National Airport is urging passengers to check with their airlines for scheduling updates. There may be delays related to this law enforcement incident that is now playing out in downtown D.C. We understand there was an earlier ground stop as a medevac was able to take one of those injured victims to that airspace. So we know that that sadly has resulted in a death, but there was a temporary ground stop for Reagan National. So we're seeing the impacts play out locally, and we know there are National Guard troops deployed in many major cities across the country. So this is going to definitely spark a broader conversation in cities like Portland and cities like Chicago, where you have these
and others where it's been
several other cities where you have National Guard troops from other states in their cities, occupying those cities, and whether they should be there. And we know these guardmen were armed. That was something that initially wasn't the case when the president ordered National Guard troops in D.C. They weren't armed, and then they became armed. Now, a big question here today is going to be whether the Guard involved in this shooting had an opportunity to fire back. There was reporting that we have not confirmed yet that there was an exchange of gunfire, so that would imply that a member of the Guard was able to fire back. We haven't independently confirmed that, so we're working on that. But we know that the Guardsmen who are occupying D.C., they were armed at the time.
Yeah, and that was a big a bone of contention. And of course, as you laid out, these other cities, a lot of legal fights on whether or not the Guard should be allowed in their cities and states. We've got new reaction. Both Victoria Sanchez and Tom Rousey are in studio, both of them getting some new information. Victoria, real fast, let's get to you and then to Tom.
I just wanted to go through some of the numbers when it comes to how many National Guard troops are in D.C. with Joint Task Force D.C. District of Columbia has 950, the second largest number of National Guard troops in the nation's capital. They are from West Virginia, and we know the 2 National Guard members who were killed are from West Virginia. 420 National Guardsmen from West Virginia. So first District Columbia, then West Virginia, then Georgia. As you know, we have multiple law enforcement agencies on this, and we also have National Guardsmen who are aiding in this investigation after 2 of their fellow Guardsmen were shot. A lot of response coming in from social media right now, but what I want to do is turn it over to our Tom Rousey, who is at the alert desk following some more. Tom.
Victoria, a lot of the reaction that came in is bipartisan condemnation of this. Some of it before folks realized that these 2 National Guard members had passed away. Governor Gavin Newsom of California saying there must be zero tolerance for violence of any kind against the brave men and women in uniform who selflessly serve our communities and our country. The shooting of National Guard members in Washington, D.C. is horrific and unacceptable. So some of the condemnation of this shooting coming from folks who haven't supported the National Guard deployment in various American cities. This is where we learned that sadly both of the National Guard members had passed away. This is West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey, where he confirmed that they had passed away. And he says here at the end about how the state grieves with the families, their loved ones, and the Guard community. West Virginia will never forget their service or their sacrifice, and we will demand full accountability for this horrific act. In addition, members of the Trump cabinet reacting. This is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He says the National Guard has been working around the clock to keep Washington, D.C. safe, and their presence has made a real positive difference. Today's senseless act of violence against innocent servicemen is utterly disgusting. And of course, National Guard troops have become just something a lot of folks have gotten used to seeing around D.C. prior to today. Now, the president also put out reaction to this. We have shared this with you before, but in case you're just joining us, he said on his Truth Social, the animal that shot the 2 National Guardsmen, with both being critically wounded and now in 2 separate hospitals, is also severely wounded, but regardless, will pay a very steep price. And that, of course, put out before the president or the rest of us learned that those 2 National Guard members.
Hey, Tom, I know you keep really close tabs on what's going on transportation-wise all the time. Busy metro station there. Do we know what's going on?
Let me get back to you in just a moment on that, Scott.
All right.
We'll check into that.
All right, we'll check back in with Tom in just a couple minutes to talk for people who may be trying to get through that area or figuring out their travel at this point. But take another live look here. Obviously, based on the stance and behavior of law enforcement, we would assume, if we could take a little bit of a leap here, that the scene is fully secure, as they reported earlier, but indeed that there's not an added threat, that the only threat they believe to be that one shooter might be the case, because it's a bit of a casual response at the moment, as far as you don't see urgency in running around, weapons drawn.
Right. Our Christian Flores is standing by. He actually has with him a witness. Christian, tell us more.
Yeah, right now we're standing with Michael Jones. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I know you said that you didn't quite see the shooting, but you saw the aftermath. Can you just, what exactly did you see?
Very simple word, bedlam. The chaos that ensued on both sides of K Street, all the way from between the 2 metros, was just a rush of, excitement and fear, with people running away from the scene, and then the police coming on there, and then multiple, departments, Secret Service, Park Police, MPD, all coming to the scene to address the issue, and then the ambulances, of course, and then just the buildup of curiosity watching, and then the expansion of the crime scene to, continue the investigation, and then obviously what has happened now, where we are, where you're standing right now doing the reporting with all the other reporters.
When you say bedlam, I mean, did you have any idea? Because I know front, and now we have confirmation two National Guard troops.
Many people were walking down saying service members were just shot, National Guardsmen, so there was a concern. Our restaurant was put on lockdown. Many places were put on lockdown. Obviously, we're so close to the White House that it was immediate lockdown with them, and then other businesses were doing the same thing.
Was there a concern for your safety? Because at that point, I'm sure you didn't know if a suspect was in custody or not.
I think there's always a concern. You know, when they say active shooter, you think of the same things with high schools and elementary schools, that when that happens, you have to be concerned about who's out there, and you have to watch it. So we had customers, and we have to make sure that we're taking care of them as well, too.
You know, when you heard that possible service members that were shot, what was your reaction? What's your reaction now? Hearing that the West Virginia governor says that they're dead now.
Still, we have to figure out what all the facts are. I mean, hearing the fact that these National Guardsmen who are here for a reason, they're doing a job, it is absolutely just appalling and horrifying to hear the day before Thanksgiving that we have somebody's family member is no longer with us because of somebody's, reckless behavior.
Yeah, and you having, this restaurant, I know we heard from, business leaders and public safety advocates around the time when the federal enforcement and you had the National Guard deployed in the city. There are people on both sides. Obviously, people didn't want, any sort of federalization. DC, you had people welcoming the safety. What was your reaction when you first heard of National Guard troops being deployed here, and then to hear this develop?
I think that we follow what the federal government is operating right now. I don't really have an opinion whether or not it's done effectiveness or not. I think that I've not seen anything, unusual happening. I think they've done a very professional job, but nonetheless, this is something you don't want to have happen. So,
you mentioned, we're right before Thanksgiving. You have the family time, Thanksgiving, and to hear that, two families are now dealing with this heartbreak, just when you think of that, just what goes through your mind?
And it tears at you. This is something nobody wishes to have happen, especially this is a domestic terrorist. And this is something that you just don't want to have happen or even dream to think happen, and it has. And so being close to it, seeing it, it's a conversation that's going to be happening at the tables tomorrow, especially in the DMV. You don't want to have to start the holiday season with, my God, what happened yesterday?
And my last question before I let you go, but you said you've been here for decades. We've seen shooting scenes throughout the city. I mean, just on a given day. But have you seen anything quite like this? I mean, we've seen so many city blocks just taped off here.
Honestly, since I used to work at the White House, not since the Oklahoma bombing have I seen a heightened sense of security, and then with 9/11. This is pretty much equal to that level. Obviously, it warrants the importance of being here and doing what they have to do, the due diligence with the investigation. But nonetheless, here we go again. We're dealing with unfortunate situation that we have to embrace and work through, and hopefully understand and move forward.
Well, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. And we're just kind of set the scene here too. We just heard a little bit of yells. Sorry about that. Something just caught our attention, but it doesn't seem like to be anything much. But we've moved over to 17th and K right now, and I want to kind of give you a shot. We're right by Farragut Square, and you see just kind of the massive police presence out here. Very similar to what we saw just a few blocks down. And right now it looks like they're about to set up for a press conference. We're hoping to get a little bit more information from this press conference, and I want to send it back to you so we can kind of get set up, so we can get a little bit more information. Obviously, this is an evolving investigation, and just very few details at this point. We're hoping to get more details coming up soon. As you see right here, we have a press conference. It appears to be starting somewhat soon. At least the setup is starting right now.
Okay. All right, Christian, we'll let you and your crew do your thing and get in position so we can bring that to our audience live. When you have a situation like this is an area that's used to leaning on each other in terms of law enforcement. When there are large events, take it being an inauguration or anything of that magnitude, the coordination that is required for law enforcement is paramount, and we're likely seeing some of that play out where agencies across the river even lending resources to assist. We know we have a lot of federal agencies, pretty much all the three-letter ones involved in this investigation as it is in its early stages. They try to learn more, especially about the suspect, who this person was, what their motive was. Was this something that they could have seen red flags for in the past? Did they have any kind of online footprint that would have led them to believe such an act was being prepared for, they were plotting. A lot of unknowns. We likely won't get answers to those questions in this news conference, but that is where this investigation is likely to go next after the scene is cleared and they are able to gather any physical evidence from the scene.
Yeah, and you point out that these law enforcement agencies work hand in glove on these situations. They have a lot of experience, a lot of training. The fact that they have experience is unfortunate, but this is a city that is always under some sort of level of threat, and they are speak to each other on how to do so best. We want to get back over to Tom Rousey because the obvious factor here after this horrific incident that is playing out is that there are a lot of people involved, a lot of people in the city who've been trying to get back and forth. You heard from that gentleman that Christian Flores was interviewing. He's probably one of many who are kind of stuck in place right now. Transportation an issue as well. So let's get over to Tom for a look at what they can do. I know everything from the subway, the metro to DCA is feeling the effect.
Yeah, Scott, obviously this is not nearly as important as the 2 lives that were lost. However, it is a very busy travel day for both commuters and folks traveling for Thanksgiving. Now, I've reached out to Metro to try to get more information if there are any other impacts, but what they have put out at this point is that the east side entrance at Farragut West, which is very close to where the shooting took place, is closed because of the investigation. However, the west side entrance remains open. That's the latest we've heard from Metro, so it appears that station is still operating, and because it has 2 entrances and exits, you can get out from there on the 18th Street side, but not the 17th. That's the latest. I've reached out for more than that. Now, there was a ground stop at Reagan National Airport briefly for, quote, security reasons, which we believe were related to this, and the latest here that we've gotten on flight delays for the day. There's been more than 200 today. Now, a lot of those happened before this shooting, but the ground stop obviously affected things somewhat, so it's a very busy travel day there at the airport. The delays not out of control at this point, but that ground stop did affect some of the flights, so that will slow things down a little bit there at the airport. But just a lot of busy travel going on, and of course some of the streets in the area where this happened in downtown Washington are closed as well. So that's kind of the latest from the transportation standpoint. And I'll go back to you.
Yeah, and we knew that would be a factor, so stay on top of that, Tom, because there is an audience that will want to know exactly what they need to do to avoid more confusion after all of this. For those of you who are just joining us and are tuning in to typically watch 7 News at 4 o'clock with Victoria and Megan, we've got breaking news right now. That is this shooting that took place in the 2 o'clock hour downtown D.C., not too far from the White House. 2 National Guard members targeted in this shooting. Both of them were transported in critical condition. Both of them, we have been told, have now died. There is a 3rd person who reportedly has been shot. We are trying to clarify whether or not that 3rd person is the suspect who has been taken down by law enforcement or another victim who happened to be in that vicinity. A news conference is expected to begin sometime soon. We've got Christian Flores down at Farragut Park, Farragut Square, excuse me, where that took place. And then we have Rebecca Turco, who is at George Washington University Hospital, where victims have been transported. We're going to continue to monitor this scene because we don't know exactly what we're going to learn in this news conference, and we're also awaiting words from the president. He was not at the White House at the time. He was down in Florida for the holiday. We're awaiting word from the president aside from what he has posted on social media. Let's get to Rebecca Turco at George Washington University Hospital.
Hi, good evening. So I'm just learning from a law enforcement source that 2 of the 3 victims were actually brought to this hospital here. And it's believed because of that means one of the victims is the National Guards person and the other victim was the non-National Guards person, because per the president's tweet, per his social media post, I should say, we know that the National Guard victims were taken to 2 separate hospitals. And really things have been busy here. I'm not sure if you can see to the side of here, but we've got several police cruisers that have really been coming and going in the area. So we're certainly keeping an eye on that. And we know at this point, again, from what I'm learning from a law enforcement source, that at least that 2 of the victims are here at GW Hospital. It's believed the 3rd victim may be at MedStar, but that is not confirmed at this point. So we're really working to learn more, and the news is getting out there as we're out here. People are walking home for the end of the day. They're asking us what's going on. So lots of concern in this area. We're going to send it back to you as we work to learn more.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. And we want to just take a step back to reflect on the human toll of this tragedy, because that's exactly what this is. You have National Guard troops on tour from West Virginia, already away from their family ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday. And now 2 families are going to get the awful news that their loved one has died while serving their country here in the nation's capital. A very dark day for our city and the communities impacted. We want to go now to that news conference where Christian Flores was setting up. We understand it is getting close to starting. If we can pop that picture up, we will share that with you live. Looks like they're just getting situated with the microphones there. But we expect to learn much more from law enforcement, MPD, the FBI, all leading this investigation. Doesn't look like they're quite ready yet. You got to imagine there are a lot of parties involved in this in terms of law enforcement. So to get everyone on the same page and make sure they are consistent with their messaging and the information that they have to share, that's very critical at a time like this, because what you don't want is during a breaking news situation for early information to come out that has not been confirmed or verified. Scott, you have something to add?
Yeah, we've got Governor Patrick Morrisey of West Virginia, the state of which these 2 National Guard members came from, has just put out some more information and tweeted out, we are now receiving conflicting reports about the condition of our 2 Guard members. Okay, this is very important, so let's pause for a second here. We had reported, because the governor had said, that both Guard members had died. He has, in the past 6 minutes, issued this statement on social media. I'll say it again. We are now receiving conflicting reports about the condition of our 2 Guard members and will provide additional updates once we receive more complete information. Our prayers are with these brave service members, their families, and the entire Guard community. This often happens when there is a chaotic scene where information is floating around very quickly, especially across the internet, and then you get statements. His statement originally may be accurate. We don't know, but the West Virginia governor, going back on his previous declaration that both Guard members had died.
And that speaks to what I was just saying in the sense of you have all of these agencies working on such a huge investigation, and the need to not rush with information. We often want to know the why right away, but sometimes that requires more time and more careful review before information is shared. Let's check in with our Victoria Sanchez. Victoria, do you have an update for us right now?
Well, I've just been looking into how many of the West Virginia National Guardsmen are still in the district. So a little bit ago, I looked up on the Joint Task Force D.C. website. It said 420, but just last week, that number was reduced to 160 West Virginia National Guardsmen still in the district, and this is on a volunteer basis as the rest of their fellow service members went back to West Virginia. So the 2 that were shot today, again, we are not sure of their condition right now, but the 2 that were shot today are a part of 160 that were sent to D.C. for the Joint Task Force D.C. under President Trump, trying to beautify the district and also really wrangle in some of the violence. And unfortunately today we've had an incident where near the White House, 2 of those National Guard members were shot and injured, and hopefully we'll get an update on the condition. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, we can't stress enough while we wait for some confirmation and some more accurate information from this news conference by law enforcement agents right there at Farragut Park. But the fact that that there has been a lot of controversy around having National Guard members in the city, and there has been a lot of pushback. There has been legal back and forth to see an incident like this, and we certainly don't want to guess any sort of motives here. We're not going to get into that, but we will say that there has been a great concern about safety for law enforcement amid some of this pushback. Whether or not that is what took place here, maybe we'll find out in this news conference. But remember, these scenes have a tendency to develop very quickly at first, and then it takes a long time to get down to the truth and find out what exactly happened. You heard Vice President J.D. Vance making some brief remarks earlier saying we don't yet know a motive. Obviously we don't. We're still waiting to hear more. All we know is that this city is shut down around the White House right now. Those road closures. He's got some more on that, Tom.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't need to be in the area of the White House or downtown Washington, it is best to stay away at this point. From our friends here at Google Maps, they've kept track of the streets that are shut down at this point. It's a lot of them. 17th Street to the west side of the White House is closed at this time, as well as portions of K Street, according to this, are shut down. Also, I Street near where this happened, H Street near where this happened, just kind of a lot of random streets in the area. It's kind of to the west and also to the north and slightly northeast of the White House are closed at this point due to the shooting. So obviously not a good idea to try to drive in that area, but it's also just a good idea to stay away and let law enforcement do their job at this point if you don't absolutely have to be there. Now, in addition to that, I did just hear from Metro, and they do say, yes, this is the latest information, what we told you earlier, and I did check, and trains are running there at the Farragut West station. They say, however, it is important to know the east side on 17th Street there of Farragut West, that entrance and exit is closed. However, there is one on 18th Street that still remains open. So if you need to take Metro, maybe you need to get out of town at this point, you can still do so using Farragut West, but you have to do it on 18th Street as opposed to 17th Street. Now, in addition to that, we've been checking. There was a brief ground stop at Reagan National Airport. This is the list of affected airports in the country with delays, that sort of thing right now from the FAA. You see DCA is not on it anymore. However, there have been a number of delays, some of which were at least partially the result of that ground stop. It was very brief, but they said it was for security reasons, and we do believe it was related to the shooting that happened there. So obviously this is all happening on what is a very, very busy travel day for many folks who are coming to this area for Thanksgiving, leaving from the area to go other places on Thanksgiving, and it is having at least a slight impact on that at this point. And of course, there's people working today in downtown Washington who need to get home. Again, Metro system, as best we can tell at this point, entirely up and running except for that one entrance to the Farragut station there. I'm Tom Rousey at the Alert Desk.
Yeah, okay, let's take a look at the scene now. And what I want to do now is relay something that's being reported here from it's from ABC News, from our partners at ABC News. And Chris Plater is a photographer who used to work here at 7 News. He now works for ABC News. And he has been described as a witness, and he was just on, and he was talking about this, what he saw. And he said one National Guard was lying on his side. They were rendering aid to him. He wasn't moving, but he was on his side. And then I looked at the other National Guard member that was down and saw compressions going on. He went on to say, so I don't think that was the person that had done the shooting. All I could tell you is that I identified 2 National Guard members being worked on. Eventually, the one National Guard that was on his side, he got to move a little bit, and he was on his side, and they were still working on him. But the other National Guard member, I just saw compressions going on in the chest area. That's all I can tell you. So that's a photographer who used to work here and now works with ABC News Network, was in that area covering the White House, and witnessed the immediate aftermath of this scene, and describes the aid that was being rendered almost immediately on these 2 Guard members. They are not far from the White House, and you would imagine that the reaction and response by law enforcement would be very, very fast. That is an area where you know, you can't look 10 feet without seeing someone in uniform or some law enforcement officer. And now, especially as Victoria's pointed out, with so many members of the National Guard, in this case from West Virginia, in that area on duty and volunteering, by the way, to stay through the holidays, that that would indicate that there had to be a very large presence. Let's get back to Victoria for a little bit more on that.
So, Scott, as you just said, these 160 West Virginia National Guard members are volunteering. I just looked to see how long their tour lasts, and it's just until the end of the year. So the National Guard members that were shot today, they were supposed to go home by December 31st. That is when Their tour was done with Joint Task Force D.C. Another thing that we need to just let you know about is that when a shooting like this happens, when we have such a large presence of law enforcement officers coming here, and when they're rendering aid to one of their own. This is a National Guard member, 2 of them, but they are law enforcement. So this is a brotherhood and a sisterhood where everybody's coming together. So you will see a lot of the men and women wearing badges, wearing their uniforms that will have solemn looks on their faces, because this, to them, is an attack on them. It's not different agencies here. They're all under one agency, which is law enforcement. So this is going to be a tough time for those who weren't directly involved in this, but who are, you know, men and women behind the badge. Scott.
Victoria, thank you. We do want to just recap here at 4:20 and show you this social media post from Governor Patrick Morrisey, where he says we are now receiving conflicting reports about the condition of our 2 Guard members, and will provide additional updates once we receive more complete information. Our prayers are with these brave service members, their families, and the entire Guard community. Now, that was a follow-up to a previous tweet where he said it was with great sorrow that we can confirm both members of the West Virginia National Guard who were shot earlier today in Washington, D.C. have passed away from their injuries. So now backtracking on that and saying we're receiving conflicting reports. So at this time, it is a wait and see. We're waiting for official confirmation from law enforcement to provide an update on the status of the Guard members who were shot today. We know that at least 2 of them were shot, a 3rd person also injured. Rebecca Turco is at George Washington Hospital. She's been monitoring the scene there, and she was able to confirm at least 1 of those Guard members were being cared for or treated there. As far as the status, again, we're waiting for official word. A look there at the hospital, a lot of activity as well. Downtown area, not the place to be. In fact, law enforcement urging people to avoid the area, not a time to come and check out the scene and see what's going on. A number of people fortunate to have the day off, the day before Thanksgiving, so the intensity of the traffic not as heavy as it likely would have been on a traditional work day, but nevertheless, with so much of downtown D.C. now shut down, a number of roads closed, we are seeing significant traffic issues as you try to navigate the area. We also saw earlier today DCA also impacted. We understand that was to allow airspace for a medevac flight for one of the injured. At this time, we are still standing by for that news conference to learn more about the suspect. There are some videos surfacing online that we've yet to confirm, showing a takedown of one of the suspects. We don't have confirmation on that, so we're not able to share it just yet. But you can see the massive media interest in this story, as we've pointed out, not just a local story, national implications here. American cities. There will be conversations following this that want to know, people wanting to know whether this is the right approach, whether the conversation about having National Guard troops, it is necessary, and ways to protect them as they are in various communities across the country.
Yeah, and I was just out in Portland doing some reporting, Portland, Oregon, one of the cities where there's been a big fight about whether or not National Guard should be allowed to patrol those city streets as well to help fight crime that has spiked over the past couple of years, and they've been very much against that concept in that particular state for the most part. Nonetheless, that is, as you pointed out, going to be an impassioned debate moving forward. The Associated Press, very brief interview that they have relayed here with an eyewitness, a woman by the name of Stacy Walters, who said she was near 17th Street and in a car when she heard 2 gunshots. So those are the 2 she heard. Now there's most likely been several more than that, but nonetheless, 2 gunshots. She said she heard boom, boom, and then noticed small children and others running. Almost instantly saw law enforcement swarming that area, adding, quote, "It is such a beautiful day. Who would do this?" as we are getting ready for the holidays. That shooting again, the corner of 17th and H Streets in Northwest. That is right near the White House complex, just about a block and a half away. Farragut Square is from Lafayette Square, which is then, of course, right up against the complex. But the reaction did have to be obviously very swift because you have so many law enforcement officers of all different varieties down in that area. on any given day, but the holidays are especially a sensitive nature time for law enforcement. They're always on a heightened alert when there is any big event in Washington, D.C., whether it is a 4th of July or a holiday such as the one we're about to have or an inauguration. It is tantamount that people kind of amp up their game when it comes to securing the city. Let's get back to Christian Flores. He's been down there for a good bit of the afternoon. He did an interview earlier today with more people who are down there.
I mean, hearing the fact that these National Guardsmen who are here for a reason, they're doing a job, it is absolutely just appalling and horrifying to hear the day before Thanksgiving that we have somebody's family member is no longer with us because of somebody's, reckless behavior.
And again, this is playing out just about a block or so blocks away from the White House. We should remind our audience that the president not at the White House, already in West Palm for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Brad Bell, our reporter, our Maryland bureau chief, who's very tapped in with law enforcement, he has just passed this bit of information along to us, telling us that it is reportable, and it comes from a high-ranking source, that both soldiers, according to Brad Bell's high-ranking source, both soldiers were shot point blank in the head. Both are still alive, but in very critical condition. That coming into us at 4:25 p.m. from Brad Bell, as the entire 7 News team is digging more information out of this. We want to continue our team coverage of this breaking news with our Washington, D.C. reporter, Felicia Ashley.
Yeah, Felicia is live there in D.C. with more information. Felicia, the National Guard has been deployed in D.C. since August. What more are you learning?
Right. Well, we are in Northwest D.C. We were headed towards the scene, but stopped here because this has been a central part for the Guardsmen, or area rather for the Guardsmen. We are blocks away from the White House, blocks away from downtown, blocks away from Chinatown. This area, as we know throughout the summer until now, is where we actually saw a lot of that National Guard presence. So what we're learning right now, at least from community members, is they are saying this is something they have hoped to avoid throughout this whole time. Even as we learned or heard that the Guardsmen may be leaving or filtered out of the district, many people echoed to me that they're just thankful that this hadn't happened. So now for them to hear that 2 Guardsmen were shot today, this is exactly what all community members were preventing, or rather did not want to see or happen. This was part of the contention for those who were against this, and also those who were in support of seeing the Guardsmen here also did not want this to happen. So what we saw today is literally something that all the community, no matter what side anyone was on, did not want to experience. Right, so I'm going to keep pushing to learn more. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're just going to ask you. I mean, you've covered a lot of this this surge of law enforcement over the past couple of months, especially regarding the National Guard. You've talked with members of the community about that. Did you experience or come across a lot of people who had a big problem with having the National Guard here in D.C.?
There was a mix. In some communities who possibly already felt over-policed would say that they did not want the presence there, but then there were other communities who also said they wanted to see this heightened presence, who also said just made them feel secure seeing the men and women in uniform walking around. Some who honestly said to me that they didn't see them really doing much in a sense of intervening in the community, but just being a presence that they said felt good to see them. As we reported, in some places like Union Station, we saw a lot of community members taking pictures with them. We saw even some of the National Guard's members taking pictures of tourists, so that was the relationship there at Union Station. In other areas, we saw the National Guardsmen providing that support to law enforcement, and in some areas that really say they needed more of a presence, period, whether it was police, law enforcement, federal enforcement. Some of those neighborhoods did like seeing the Guardsmen to add extra security in places they felt the police either were not or were not stepping up to provide that presence. So there's been a mix, depending on where you ask. Some areas that wanted more of that presence, others who felt that it truly wasn't needed.
You're talking there, Felicia, I'm just thinking about some of the calls from east of the river where communities wanted to see more of a police presence, and the real shock that comes with where this shooting happened. I mean, the heart of downtown, heavily traveled area, tourist district, steps away from the White House. What's your take on that?
I mean, you hit it right on the nail. You said there were some parts on the other side of the river who mentioned that they did want this presence here. Areas that said they've been dealing with a lot of crime. They needed something. They needed someone to be there to help draw down what they were seeing when it came to crime, and especially with juveniles getting involved. And they said they felt that in some areas when the Guardsmen were here. As you mentioned, this shooting is something that no one wanted, something that I'm sure if I were to go back to those communities today, they will say it's exactly what they wanted to avoid. They didn't want this point of what may have been contention, and they didn't want it to lead to this. So those who did or did not want the Guardsmen here, all around, they didn't want violence towards them at any point.
Yeah, safer D.C. is what everybody has been pushing for, no matter what side of the debate you're on. Felicia, thank you so much for your live reporting. And as we recap here at 4:30, we just want to remind our viewers, if you're just joining us, that we are standing by for an update from police. As you see, the scene remains very active downtown D.C. This is along K Street near I and 17th is where the initial report of the shooting came in from, but it is a much broader perimeter now that this investigation is about into its fourth hour as we continue to track the developments from today's tragic news of 2 National Guard members being shot. We understand that they are both from West Virginia, but in terms of their status, their condition, we're still waiting for clarification on that. We heard conflicting information from the governor of West Virginia. He passed away, and then he later posted on X that he has to retract that, and there is some uncertainty about their status. So we're waiting for official word before we can definitely say what we know about those victims. But the scene right there tells you everything you need to know. Heavy police volume in the area, multiple law enforcement agencies collaborating on this one as they work to figure out a motive in this case and also provide updates to the media. A lot of interest in this story.
Well, and we're also now hearing from the Defense Department, from the Pentagon, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, who has said that 500 additional law enforcement, or I guess National Guard, is that correct, Abby? Asking producer Abby here. Okay, National Guard, 500 more Guard members are going to be sent to Washington, D.C. So we're instantly seeing some sort of reaction from the Pentagon that as a result of what we're seeing here today, perhaps, we're going to see 500 more Guard members brought into the city. And Victoria Sanchez has more on that, or some other information coming in right now to the 7 News studio. Victoria.
Yeah, we're still learning about the additional troops and where they would come from, since we know that multiple states have sent troops to Washington, D.C. Now, because tomorrow is Thanksgiving, this usually happens where the leaders of agencies will send their subordinates a letter thanking them for their service during a holiday time. That is what happened just a few hours ago before this shooting. So this was a joint statement from SEC John T. Raines with the Army and the General Steve Norhouse with the U.S. Air Force. They both have Guardsmen, and they said this. Quote, "We know that many will gather around their tables with their loved ones, yet for many of you, your service often means being far from home during the Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you for protecting our nation at home and abroad. Please know that your sacrifices do not go unnoticed, and your contributions are appreciated by a grateful nation." That is just part of this letter that was sent out earlier today before this shooting, thanking the Guardsmen around the world for doing their job. What we do know is that there were 420 West Virginia National Guardsmen in D.C. for Joint Task Force D.C. That number, as of last week, was reduced to 160, and they were going to go home on December 31st. Scott.
All right, Victoria, we're going to get to some more eyewitness sound. We've got a couple crews down there at the scene. They've been gathering information and hearing from people who either witnessed this or witnessed the aftermath of this chaotic scene. Let's listen in. Actually, hang with us just 1 second. We're queuing up that tape. Okay. We ready? Nope. Okay. In the meantime, we are waiting for this news conference. Oh, we do have it now. All right, let's listen in.
I was in the Uber, I heard boom, boom, twice. I was looking at my cell phone, and the Uber driver said, "Why are all these people running?" So then I looked out the window, and it was little children. They looked probably about 5 years old on both sides of the street running, and adults. And whoever was supervising the children said, "Go, run." Then I heard someone yell, "Help, help," in the direction of the shooting. But I didn't see who yelled help. I don't know if it was an individual who was shot or someone yelling for help.
You know, like pop, pop, pop. You know, it could have been a steel plate or something. There's a lot of construction and things going around. So I just thought that maybe it was some plates going on or something like that. But then boom, boom, boom. And so I'm starting to hear these big guns. I'm like, okay, this is something's going on. So people at first were a little shocked. They just thought, like, is that construction? And so some people kind of jogged a little bit, and then those big booms started happening. People started crying out like, "Yo, this is a little bit serious. This is shooting. There's something bad going on." So immediately I went forward to see what was going on, and as you see in the video, I see 2 National Guard members down, and people were working on them, providing first aid.
That was Chris Plater there. That's the former photographer who used to work here at 7 News, now works with ABC News. So he was down in that vicinity. That's why he was an eyewitness to all this, because he works just a block away from it all.
What a chilling firsthand account from that woman who spoke of the children who witnessed this. She says a woman was there with a number of children, and they were just across the street, and that woman had to yell to run to these little kids. The trauma that they will be left with after witnessing such a horrific scene is just another layer to this awful tragedy of this shooting involving 2 National Guard members. And look at the size of the media that has now grown since we've been waiting about 30 minutes now for this news conference to take place. We are hoping for significant updates because a lot of people are eager, ourselves included, to learn more about what happened today. Not sure in terms of how much new information we will learn, but as soon as that news conference takes place, we will bring it to you live.
Yeah, and we also heard from Vice President J.D. Vance. He was scheduled to make an appearance and was doing so when all of this news broke, and he gave some immediate reaction. Let's listen into that.
It's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America. And as a person who goes into work every single day in that building and knows that there are a lot of people who wear the uniform of the United States Army, let me just say very personally, thank them for what they're doing. We're grateful to them.
You know, there's the Vice President there, but obviously the reactions pouring in from all around the country, and eventually I'm sure we'll hear from beyond those borders. But one of those who posted on social media shortly ago was Gabrielle Giffords. And for those not familiar, that's the former Congresswoman who was shot and almost killed in an act of political violence. And she posted, "My heart is with the National Guard members shot," and then she had what may or may not be bad information there, but she said shot and killed. But of course, we now know that has been scaled back. We're waiting to find out what the truth is there. But she said her heart is with those National Guard members who were shot near the White House today, and their families who are left to grieve the day before Thanksgiving. These shootings are senseless and frequent. They impact everyone, and we have to do more. And that's from someone who knows very well on the receiving end of such a terrible thing. Let's listen in on this news conference now that we've been.
I think we want to go to our Christian Flores, our reporter that is near the scene. Christian, do you have any updates for us?
We're still waiting for the news conference. I want to kind of give you a glance of just kind of what we've been dealing with. I mean, just pretty much any news outlet you could think, not only around the country, but even around the world are out here. We did see a couple representatives from the mayor's office. You imagine she's going to have some words to say about this, just given the gravity of a situation like this. But I also wanted to kind of show you what we're looking at, because earlier in the evening, we were a couple blocks over, but right now we are on 17th and K. It looks like they're getting some cars moving in and out of the scene. But if you go down all the way to the end of the block, I mean, you can see how many officers, federal officers, MPD, just everyone flooded to this scene. And it's a pretty massive scene because, like I mentioned, earlier this afternoon, we were a few blocks away and we were seeing something similar to this. We're just a few blocks from the White House. Any sort of shooting scene you imagine, at least a couple blocks taped off, but this is several blocks. We saw Secret Service police officers having to really manage traffic as people were really rubbernecking and taking a look what's going on. We have a lot of onlookers out here, and you see just how much of a presence is out here. This is still a dynamic situation, even a couple hours later, and you can see just how many people are gathered here. And we're still waiting on information. Like you mentioned, I mean, we've been getting conflicting information as far as the condition of the National Guard troops who were shot. So we're hoping to get a little bit of clarity on that. We're hoping to get a little more clarity on the suspect. If the suspect is one of the 3 people that was taken to the hospital, what the condition of that suspect is. We were told that there's a suspect in custody at the very least, but right now it's just wall to wall out here in D.C. Just pretty much any intersection that's close to the White House and close to any number of federal agency buildings have just been taped off as we await any sort of update, any more information further than what we have so far.
Christian, just briefly, for those who did not tune in earlier and they're joining us now, let everyone know exactly where you are in relation to this scene, and of course that you're, just a block and a half from the White House, but give people an understanding of how busy this area is on any given day, and then of course where it all took place.
Yeah, we're on 17th and K Street, right by the Farragut North Metro Station. As far as how busy it is, I mean, look, when you come to D.C., there are a handful of landmarks that really come to mind, the White House being one of them, and this shooting happening so close. A crazy thing that we saw, I saw one sort of tourist trolley kind of ride by, and obviously the people on that little trolley kind of taking a look. So this is a very popular area. You imagine that there wasn't going to be as much rush hour traffic just because of the day before the holiday. I'm sure a lot of people had already had their holiday travel set in motion yesterday maybe. But there's still a lot of people who come to town who want to take a look at the sites, at the White House specifically. And when the shooting like this happens so close, it's going to be blocked up. It's going to be a lot more chaos than you would normally expect for such a tourist destination. Just, again, words don't quite describe what we're seeing out here, just because there's so many federal and local police officers out here on scene just trying to get an idea of what's going on and what exactly happened. We were a little bit closer at one point this afternoon, but you might have seen at around 3 o'clock, 3:15, a Secret Service police officer was yelling at everybody, get back, and they set up. Shortly after they set up the police tape, we saw a canine sniffing around some of the vehicles there, kind of letting us know that they're still trying to investigate the scene. I mean, even though they took National Guard troops to the hospital, it's not a done deal. They still got to, clear the scene and just look for any sort of evidence to, be able to get this investigation off the ground. But, obviously we're still waiting on a little bit more details. I mean, again, I wanted to show you just the mass of media that's right out here. We've been waiting for, I guess, the last 20 minutes or so for an update. Once they started setting up the place to put all of our microphones up, we've been waiting since then, hoping to get any sort of word. But as far as who we're going to hear from, I mean, that's still obviously up in the air. We expect probably, you would imagine, the National Guard, but we definitely saw representatives from the mayor's office out here, just a day after she had that massive announcement. And earlier today, she obviously spoke to the media about her decision not to run for re-election. And you imagine she's going to have to come back out here talking with the media about this particular incident, about this shooting that sent 2 National Guard troops to the hospital. And remember, we've been talking about it throughout our coverage. National Guard troops who were deployed to the streets of D.C. as part of a crime-fighting strategy from the White House.
What a 24 hours it's been for the mayor, as you mentioned, her announcement not to run for re-election, and then a big story like this. Christian, thank you very much. And Christian also talked about the amount of traffic. I should point out there is a Caps game tonight, and a pretty big one. That one's supposed to take place at 7 o'clock to honor Ovi for reaching 900 goals and for playing 1,500 games with the same franchise team. So you have to imagine that there's going to be a lot of people making their way into the city at a time where police are trying to keep people away. I'm tracking latest updates online to see if there is going to be a delay in that game. So far, I don't see anything that suggests that. But again, there is going to be more people entering the city and Capital One Arena, not far from where this investigation is playing out. So if you do have plans to attend that game, you can anticipate heavy detours and lots of traffic, and it's probably going to be really tough to even get there. And that game is supposed to start at 7.
Yeah, just moments ago, we did hear, as we talked about, from the Pentagon, from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, as he was reacting to this, I believe right outside the Pentagon steps.
Yeah, he says hundreds more National Guard troops will be sent to D.C. following today's incident.
Very productive meetings, but I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that 2 National Guardsmen have been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America. Heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful.
All right, that was the Secretary of War just moments ago following this tragic day here in the district. And we understand this news conference is getting ready to start with the FBI Director, Kash Patel, Mayor Bowser, as well as D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith. Let's listen in.
Ready. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kash Patel, FBI Director. We're here to brief you on the tragic events that happened today at approximately 2:15 local time in Washington, D.C., where 2 of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal law enforcement officer. The FBI will lead out on that mission with our interagency partners, to include the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, ATF, DEA, and we're thankful for the mayor's assistance in this matter, the Metropolitan Police Department and their skills in investigating homicides and gun shootings in this city is exceptional. We will work together collaboratively because this is a matter of national security, because this is a matter of pride. President Trump has been informed. We've been in contact with the White House. We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice. I would lastly like to add to the American public and the world, please send your prayers to those brave warriors who are in critical condition and their families. They are here serving our country. They are here protecting everyday Americans and citizens around the world in our nation's capital. They are the heroes of this day, and we must remember them on this day and every day, and their families and the sacrifice they have made. I will now turn it over to Chief Carroll of the Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Carroll. I'm the Executive Assistant Chief here at the Metropolitan Police Department. At approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the D.C. National Guard were on high visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm, and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring them into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital D.C. Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and I, too, want to send my thoughts and prayers to the families of the guardsmen and to the guardsmen who are in critical condition in a local hospital. I am joined by members and leadership from the D.C. National Guard, from the West Virginia National Guard, United States Secret Service, Deputy Mayor Pia, Fire Chief Donnelly, and Metro's General Manager Randy Clark. And we join with the FBI Director in ensuring that MPD investigates, the U.S. Attorney prosecutes this case to the fullest extent of the law. I've had the opportunity to brief U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was speaking to the president when I called, as well as the United States Attorney Pirro, who assured me that this case will have her office's complete attention.
Mayor, was there any other suspect?
Chief.
Sure. So no, at this time, there's no indication that there was any other suspect. The one suspect that was involved in this incident, they were shot during the interaction, and they were transported to the hospital for treatment.
Mayor, does this validate the need for the National Guard here in D.C.?
What we know, Andrea, is that this is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen, that individual has been taken into custody.
Mayor, can you tell us any more details on the condition of the two National Guardsmen and whether or not anyone else was injured? And a quick question follow-up for the FBI Director. You said that we'll make sure we find the perpetrators for this act. So just to clarify, the person believed to be responsible is in custody and there are no other suspects.
Sure, so I can start out. Again, Chief Carroll from MPD. So both of the individuals, the guard members, they are in critical condition at a local hospital at this time being treated. At this point, we have no other suspects. It appears, like I said, to be a lone gunman that raised a firearm and ambushed these members of the National Guard, and he was quickly taken into custody by other National Guard members and law enforcement members.
You got any sense of motive?
No, at this time, obviously, we're very in the preliminary stages of investigation. There's a lot of things, a lot of agents that are here from various federal agencies, law enforcement agencies. We have the full power of the FBI and our federal partners here in the task force, so we're looking at all those different aspects, but we don't have any motive. The National Guardsmen that were shot, I'm told they were armed.
Do they get off shots?
At this time, that's part of the preliminary investigation.
Do we know who shot the suspect, allegedly?
Chief.
Sure. So how the suspect was apprehended, as I said, the individual, the suspect came around the corner. He immediately started firing a firearm at the two National Guard members. So at that time, there were other National Guard members that were in the area. They heard the gunfire. They actually were able to intervene and to kind of hold down the suspect after he had been shot on the ground until law enforcement got there within moments.
And he was shot by a National Guardsman?
At this point, we're still investigating exactly who shot the individual. It's not clear at this time.
Were there D.C. policemen in the area?
We don't know what kind of weapon. There was D.C. police. It happened right in front of the Metro, although there is no indication that the perpetrator was on the Metro. So there's Metro Transit Police in the area, and obviously being on 17th Street by the White House, Uniformed Division of Secret Service were in the immediate area as well.
What kind of weapon the alleged perpetrator used?
We do not know at this time. It's still under investigation.
We're going to be able to take a couple more.
Has been able to question the suspect, or is his condition so severe that you haven't been able to have a conversation?
Sure. Again, so as I said, we're very preliminary in the investigation, so we're looking to all aspects of who the individual is, his connections. At this time, he's still in the hospital receiving treatment.
And I would just like, hang on, I would just like to add, the reason that this suspect is in custody is because of the bravery of the men and women of the National Guard who responded due to their extensive training to secure American lives today. There was not any further injury and any further shootings. We should highlight the fact that the men and women of law enforcement, the interagency, the Department of War, and the National Guard executed their training with great precision today and prevented an even greater tragedy from befalling us. These National Guardsmen are heroes, and we must pray for their safety and their speedy recovery. And as the chief said, we are in the preliminary stages of this investigation. We will run down every single lead, every piece of evidence. This is the power of the U.S. government at its best at the state, local, and federal level. That is why this interagency group is standing behind us to assure America and the world that we will continue to keep D.C. safe. And thankfully, we have have Metropolitan Police Department, the National Guardsmen, and federal agents, and the Department of Justice and Attorney General willing to prosecute the mission to keep Americans safe. And President Trump has rightly stated that this heinous act will be investigated, and he has thanked the National Guardsmen and women and the men and women of law enforcement.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Did the suspect say anything at the time? Why did the West Virginia government...
All right, that was just an update from D.C. and federal officials on the shooting of 2 National Guard members. We did get some clarity hearing both from the FBI, the mayor, and police that the 2 victims, 2 National Guard members, are in critical condition. So that is a bit of good news, hearing that they are still being treated for at local hospitals. And also another big element to the story that we're getting a better picture of is how this all played out. The mayor calling this a targeted shooting. MPD saying a lone gunman ambushed these National Guard members, all suggesting that these members had no chance to react, and it was only the good, quick thinking of their fellow Guard members who were nearby who were able to get this person under control until police arrived on scene.
Yeah, and you heard Chief Carroll there say that they were on what's considered high visibility patrol. And that is simply as it states. They were there to be visible, to be seen, to try and deter any crime, to offer help where needed, and to assure citizens that there is an effort to try and make them safe. And so for them to be targeted, that's why you're seeing you know, an added bit of attention to the obvious here, which is that both of them were ambushed. Terrible to hear those words both from the mayor, from the FBI, and from MPD. It was also an important clarification that there is not another suspect. What they did and took advantage of the opportunity to do so was review video from around that area. There are a lot of cameras on street corners and, of course, private through business as well, that they can get access to and request, and they searched those videos to determine that this was a lone gunman, saying that he was directly in front of the Metro entrance, but however, they said there's no indication that the person was on or off the Metro preceding this incident, but nonetheless, the video really helping them secure the scene and indicate that this is a lone gunman who they then shot, secured, put into custody, and transported for treatment. Let's get over to Tom Rousey with more information now. Tom.
Yeah, Scott, you know, authorities have asked folks to stay away from the area where this happened downtown, if at all possible. A lot of police activity there, and in fact, you can't even drive in a lot of the area down there. Online, D.C. police putting out the different streets and sections of streets that they have closed. About a 4-block area of 17th Street is closed. Also a portion of Connecticut Avenue, they say. In addition, parts of K Street are closed in that area. I Street as well, about 3 blocks of I Street closed. And also on H Street, portion is closed as well. So definitely best to avoid that area, either as a driver, pedestrian, you name it at this point. I do want to show you, though, that Metro says the rail service is still operating as normal. The only change is, of course, Farragut West is very close to where this shooting happened. The 17th and I Street entrance, which is just right about where the shooting happened, that is closed of Farragut West. However, there is another entrance that is on, I believe, 18th Street, and that one remains open, and Metro trains on the Blue Orange Silver line there are still running. Now, also want to show you what's going on at the airport, because believe it or not, shortly after this, there was a brief ground stop for security reasons related to this. Now, Reagan National Airport put out that passengers should check with their airline for schedule updates. There may be delays related to a law enforcement incident in downtown Washington, D.C. earlier today. Flights have resumed and the airport is open and operating normally. It was a very brief ground stop, but I was told by 3:45 in the afternoon, planes were taking off again. Of course, this is a very, very, very busy travel day at the airport, so even that brief ground stop obviously had an impact. And let's get the latest now from FlightAware on just how many delays there have been. This number has been growing a bit over the last hour or so. 228 delays so far today at Reagan National Airport, 3 cancellations as well. Again, the airport briefly affected by this, but not majorly, and that number for cancellations not as high as it could be depending on Thanksgiving travel, so it looks like things are relatively smooth there, Scott.
All right, Tom, for our audience now, as we begin this 5 o'clock hour here in the Washington, D.C. area, we bring you breaking news. If you are just joining us, 2 National Guard members not far from the White House ambushed, shot by a lone gunman who has since been shot as well and taken into custody. Both of those Guard members in critical condition. They have been transported to the hospital. The suspect has also been transported. The scene is now secure. All of this unfolding just after the 2 o'clock hour, and investigations just getting underway as they determine what exactly was a motive, who was responsible, and what takes.
From the FBI indicating if it were not for the fast thinking of surrounding National Guard members who were in the area, who jumped in to restrain that suspect, perhaps this could have been an even larger tragedy. Let's get out to our Christian Flores, our first reporter at the scene today, for more on this breaking story. Christian, what are you seeing now? I know you were listening in to that news conference along with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a pretty hectic couple hours here. I mean, we've seen so many media gather in the scene for that press update, but right now we're on 17th and K Street, and you can see, Secret Service police officers still really keeping this major part of the block clear with the long rifles there. And if you go down further the block, you just see all of the investigators gathered, really concentrated in this area. Now, we just heard from FBI Director Kash Patel as well as Mayor Muriel Bowser, MPD leaders, to kind of break down what exactly happened here. Officials are saying that this was a targeted attack by a lone shooter. That shooter also shot. They didn't say who shot the suspected shooter, but they did say that there were other National Guard troops in the area, as well as various D.C. police. This is also in front of a metro stop. This is a very busy area. A lot of folks work out here, so those are busy metro stops, but this did not happen at a metro stop, according to the police officials. Now, we also were told in that press conference that this was an ambush, and you heard FBI Director Patel saying that the quick thinking from officers really prevented this from being a wider tragedy. And I mean, again, even though that it's the day before Thanksgiving, you likely aren't going to have as many commuters here. It's still a very big tourist area. It's the White House. I mean, you come to D.C., and the White House is one of the landmarks that just about everyone goes to. What they did say, even though they said that they couldn't say who exactly shot the suspected shooter, that the National Guard troops, the D.C. police, all the law enforcement that was there, they were able to subdue the suspect until that suspect was taken to the hospital, who, again, was also shot in this case. Now, again, throughout the evening, we've been talking about the condition of the National Guard troops, conflicting reports throughout the evening, but we finally got a little bit more of a definitive answer there. They're still in critical condition, fighting for their lives at a local hospital. So that's obviously something that we still want to pay attention to and hopefully get updates as we go through the night. It's still early in the evening. This happened just a few hours ago, and you still see a really, really busy scene out here. I imagine it's going to look like this for the next few hours, but for now, I'll go ahead and send it back to you in the studio.
Yeah, all right, Christian, good update there. We'll check back in with you shortly, and when you see something else, just flag us and we'll come right away to you. In the meantime, Victoria Sanchez here in studio. She continues to follow new developments as well. Victoria?
Well, in that press conference, Scott and Michelle, we had Assistant Chief Carroll say that the two National Guardsmen who were shot were armed, but he said they don't know yet if they were able to fire back at this lone suspect, this lone gunman, but they were armed. So I wanted to see exactly when this change happened. So we do know that the National Guard troops were called to D.C. in August 12th, and it was just the very next week is when the National Guard were authorized to carry guns, and they were carrying M17 pistols. And according to this news release from the National Guard back in the summer, it said that the members receive initial, regular, ongoing, and refresher training, as well as complete annual weapons qualifications prior to them carrying these weapons. So the two National Guardsmen, who we know are from West Virginia, they were armed, but we don't know if they were able to fire back at the suspect. We do know the suspect was shot, not yet know who shot them, if it was a police officer. We have multiple law enforcement agencies in the D.C. area, but as of right now, we do know that they were armed.
Yeah, and law enforcement telling the Associated Press that at least one of the soldiers, as we've discussed there, exchanged gunfire with the shooter. We don't know which soldier and if it was one of the victims or someone who was also on a patrol in that high visibility role that they were conducting down there. 7 News' Rebecca Turco is live outside of George Washington University Hospital in Northwest with a lot more now, too.
Rebecca, what new are you learning from there?
Yeah, well, I'm learning from a law enforcement source that at least 2 of the victims are at the hospital here. It's unclear if the 3rd victim is at a different hospital. I'm told possibly MedStar, but obviously this is a developing story minute by minute, and there has been conflicting information. So we'll work to give you more details as we learn them. But again, we know as it relates to the National Guard's members, they are both in critical condition tonight. The suspect, who was also shot, is in custody. So we're working. I don't believe in the press conference they mentioned the condition of the suspect, but as it relates to the 2 National Guardsmen members, we know that they are in critical condition. And in the meantime, it's been a busy scene, if you will, by the hospital here. We've seen police cars coming and going really all throughout the night. A busier police presence than you would normally see in this area. So as the investigation continues and as we learn more, we'll update you on that for sure, but certainly a big police presence in this multifaceted investigation. And again, the 2 National Guard members are in critical condition tonight. Back to you.
Yeah, and that area, Rebecca, that hospital is where we have seen many people brought from a sensitive situation or shooting over the years because of its proximity to the White House complex, to the U.S. Capitol. And so that is a well-qualified group that is ready to receive whatever emergency comes its way. And important to note, as you did, there was conflicting information earlier today, and we just want to stress the clarifier there. The West Virginia governor had earlier today posted on social media that both of those National Guard members had died, and then clarified that that was not necessarily the case, that indeed they're in critical condition. So no one should get ahead of this story. We have to take this as it comes, and the information that Rebecca just providing, that they are both being treated at GW University Hospital. Certainly better news than what we were fed earlier this afternoon.
The sun now setting on the scene there. You can see the picture getting a bit darker, but we want to remind our viewers a number of people were in the area. A number of witnesses saw this all play out in real time, and we were able to interview some of them who may not have actually seen the actual shooting but saw the aftermath or heard the aftermath. Let's take a listen.
I mean, hearing the fact that these National Guardsmen who are here for a reason, they're doing a job, it is absolutely just appalling and horrifying to hear the day before Thanksgiving that we have somebody's family member is no longer with us because of somebody's, reckless behavior.
So that man, owner of a restaurant, I believe, in that area, describing what he heard and describing just the feeling. I mean, this is home for so many people. So for something like this to play out on the national stage, it really rocks you. Earlier, we heard from a woman who said she was in an Uber when she heard the gunshots. And when she looked out the window, she had been looking at her phone. When she looked out the window, she saw a number of children who were in the area scatter as they ran, seeking shelter, seeking safety. So there is a lot of people who are likely going to be brought in to be interviewed to describe what they saw, and this huge investigation is just in its infancy, just getting started. There's a lot more still to discover about the motive in this. I think hearing that this was an ambush and it was targeted leads one to believe that perhaps there may be something in this individual's background that led law enforcement and the mayor to so confidently use those words, which sometimes carry with them certain legal consequences in a situation like this.
Well, and the video, they said they got to review video, which probably backed that up or made it very clear. They say that the gunman came around a corner, raised his arm, and then just took point-blank fire at these National Guard members. Let's get to Felicia Ashley now, our D.C. reporter, because she's been covering the role that National Guard members have been playing in D.C. really back since August now. Felicia?
Yes, good evening. I know I want to give an update because I did reach out to some Guard members that I do know in the area, and I asked them if they heard about what happened, and they described this shooting as completely gut-wrenching to those who do serve in our armed forces and all of the branches. They told me that for many of them coming, if we remember that they are following orders, no matter the thoughts or the reason why or the intentions, they're following orders that they cannot go against, many away from their families, many at this time, especially counting down the days to get to their families and or missing the holidays with their families. So for them, they say hearing this really gave them a punch in the gut. But to give you some backstory of why they're all here, as you mentioned, this is part of the President's Safe and Beautiful Task Force and plans from the surge that we saw this summer. Many of them here, as we followed them throughout their work here, we saw many of them clearing up parks, helping to clear the beauty aspect of DC. We saw many of them assisting MPD. So for some community members, those, whether they were in support or against the enforcement here, they were able to see some of the work that the Guard members did do. So hearing that this happened today, no matter what side of the aisle anyone stood on, this is the moment no one wanted to see and a moment they all were hoping to avoid. Even hearing that we've been in this space for months now as it relates to having Guard members in the district. I remember interviewing community members a few weeks ago, and they were celebrating the fact that there were no major points of contention between Guard members and community members. So now to see this the day before Thanksgiving, truly breaking the hearts of not just community members, but also the Guard members that are still here and those that may be on their way. So of course, still learning more, but I did want to point your direction to the corner here. We're at the Farragut Square. This is a corner where I've seen a lot of focus from law enforcement of all levels, from the FBI. I've seen the mayor in that corner as well, of course, the police too. And we're trying to figure out exactly what's happening in that corner, but that either appears to be a home base in terms of where law enforcement is meeting or just a heavy focus area for this investigation. So I'm about to reach out to my sources to see what we can find out about what's being looked into in that corner. But as we know, 2 Guard members shot and injured today in this space. For now, reporting live from Northwest D.C., Felicia Ashley, 7 News.
As the council member representing that area, we're hearing from council member Brooke Pinto, and I just want to share her remarks. She says, as the chair of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, I am deeply disturbed and saddened that there was a shooting injuring 2 National Guard troops. These are public servants, and they should not be harmed while doing their jobs. We must be more proactive as a country to get firearms off our streets.
Yeah, and the mayor pointing out that while we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, that this is going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. They had briefed with Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, who was at the time talking with President Trump. Remember, President Trump not at the White House right now, had gone down to Florida to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday. He left last night, so he was not in the vicinity of all this. But nonetheless, Pam Bondi was speaking with the president, and they were talking with U.S. Attorney for the district, Hero, and made sure that it was expressly clear that this will have all 3 of their complete attention as they move forward with what they do. I guess calming factor here, if there is one, is that the scene has been secured, that there has been no other deemed threat, that the gunman is considered a lone gunman. They have no indication that anyone else was involved. They all expressly pointed out that it was fortunate that more people were not hurt in this shooting to take place in the middle of downtown packed D.C., just a couple of blocks from the White House, around 2 in the afternoon. It could have been much worse. Not at all, though, to downplay the severity of this situation when you have 2 National Guards members here in Washington, D.C. from West Virginia, even volunteering to take part in some of this holiday duty, and both shot, ambushed, and in critical condition.
And you think of the other on-duty Guard members tonight, how they must be shaken after something like this has happened. We heard from Felicia Ashley talk to some of her sources saying this was like a gut punch for something like this to happen, because these members, whether you agree with the duty or not, the mission, they are fulfilling a duty. So that is something that is so important to keep in mind, that they are following a mission, and whether they agree with it or not, that's a whole different story.
And there's going to be many more of them in the city. Now, as a result of this, we heard from the Pentagon, and we're going to play a clip here in just a second, but it's Pete Hegseth, the secretary there, saying that another 500 National Guard members are going to be sent into D.C. as he responded and reacted to this breaking news today. Let's listen.
Very productive meetings, but I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that 2 National Guardsmen have been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America, heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful.
All right, another live look at the scene. We want to turn it over to our Victoria Sanchez. She's been also tracking reaction that is coming into this breaking story and also looking into the contingency from West Virginia. What more are you learning, Victoria?
Well, just on the heels of what Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said with the 500 additional National Guard troops. So according to the Joint Task Force website, now this was last updated 2 weeks ago, and it said that there were 2,500 National Guardsmen in D.C. from Louisiana, Ohio, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, West Virginia, and of course, Washington, D.C. The 2 that were injured today we know are from West Virginia. But that number, that 420 that were originally in D.C., that is still posted on the website, that number dropped last week to 160. These 2 National Guard members that were here, part of the 160 volunteering to help in D.C., and they were scheduled to go home. The entire group was at the end of the year, December 31st. Something else that I'm just trying to keep track of right now is the updates from the governor. Now, the governor is saying that he has conflicting reports. As we've been reporting, he initially said that both had passed away, but we are now know that 2 of them are at the hospital, George Washington Hospital, in critical condition. That is where our Rebecca Turco is. So right now we do know that if more National Guard's troops come to D.C., it could be an additional 500 on top of the other ones that are still here.
Yeah, and that will be for many people a big headline, but nonetheless it pales in comparison to the one we're following today with these 2 National Guardsmen. For those who are just joining us now in this 5 o'clock hour, the fact that these 2 were not just shot but were, quote, ambushed, as we have heard now from the FBI Director Kash Patel, as well as the mayor, describing a scene where the gunman came around the corner, raised his gun, and then fired at both of them. Puts another level of solemnity on what we're witnessing here. What's also important to note is that this is an area that is already under high security. So the reaction was very quick because you have so many law enforcement agencies involved. And now, of course, in addition to the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, Secret Service, and U.S. Capitol, U.S. Park Police, excuse me, there are going to be contingencies of numerous law enforcement agencies who are going to cooperate and collaborate on what they're learning. We are also now hearing from D.C.'s Attorney General Brian Schwab. He has posted, "Violence is never the answer and must be swiftly condemned by all. The National Guard are volunteers. They sign up to leave their regular jobs and families at a moment's notice to serve their country. This is a heartbreaking day for D.C. and our nation. My thoughts are with the victims, their families, friends, and fellow guardsmen." And that is poignant, to say the least, because these are men and women who are doing not only what they are called to do, but in many cases volunteering. And while they've been met with some negative reaction from people, they are simply doing their job and trying to fulfill a mission to keep people in the city safe.
All right, we want to take you back out live to the scene where investigators are likely going to be there for many more hours to come. Several law enforcement agencies are involved in this investigation. They have partners on the federal, state, and local level, all supporting in this effort to get to the bottom of today's tragic news of 2 National Guard members being shot. We do know that they have a suspect. Right now, we don't have a motive in the case. We're told that the suspect made a turn around a corner, raised a weapon, and gave National Guard members no chance to really react, firing point blank, we understand, at those 2 guardsmen. It was the good work of their fellow brothers and sisters nearby who were able to jump in and detain that suspect until other law enforcement arrived on the scene and took him into custody. Right now, a lot of questions still remain about what the motive was in this case, and of course, hearing that more National Guard members will be moving in, how to protect them, their safety. National Guard members deployed in other cities across the country rather. That will be a discussion that will be had about how do we keep them safe.
And as we kind of take in what we're witnessing here on DC's streets, if we go back a little bit in time, and I'm prompted here by one of our investigative reporters here, John Barr, who pointed out that one of the worst shootings against law enforcement in Washington, D.C. occurred back on November 22nd, 1994. So we're talking, almost 30 years ago, when a gunman walked into D.C. police headquarters and shot and killed 3 law enforcement officers and then critically injured a 4th before taking his own life with a murdered FBI agent's gun. And then I was in D.C. Just a few years later covering another terrible incident that took place in 1998 when there was a gunman who came into the U.S. Capitol security checkpoint and killed Officer Jacob Chestnut and Detective John Gibson, and they were the first police officers in our history to lie in honor of the Capitol Rotunda. So we have seen what clearly are targeted shootings against members of the law enforcement community in this city. It is a terrible kind of walk down this historic reference point here, but nonetheless, today is going to be a terrible marker on that same list. Watching this scene unfold now with 2 National Guards members fighting for their life, both listed in critical condition at GW Hospital.
We want to take a listen now to some of the highlights from that news conference from the FBI and the mayor that took place just a short while ago.
At approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the D.C. National Guard were on high visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring him into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital.
2 of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal law enforcement officer. The FBI will lead out on that mission with our interagency partners to include the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, ATF, DEA, and we're thankful for the mayor's assistance in this matter, the Metropolitan Police Department and their skills in investigating homicides and gun shootings in this city is exceptional.
I've had the opportunity to brief U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was speaking to the president when I called, as well as the United States Attorney Pirro, who assured me that this case will have her office's complete attention.
All right, let's check in with Tom Rousey now, because he's got another development as we listened in just a moment ago to that news conference, for those of you who may have missed it earlier in our coverage. Tom, what do you have?
Well, Scott, of course, reaction to this pouring in from all over the DMV and the country. This is from Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. Dawn and I are praying for the West Virginia National Guard members who were shot earlier today in Washington, D.C. We condemn this violence in the strongest possible terms, and we are holding the Guard, their families, and their loved ones close in our hearts. A lot of Democrats who have opposed some of these National Guard deployments throughout the country still condemning in no uncertain terms what happened in D.C. this afternoon. Governor Newsom of California did that as well. Also, this is Fred Gutenberg. Now, he lost his daughter in the Parkland, Florida high school shooting about 7 years ago, and he says, "I don't care what anyone holds as a political position. Violence is never the answer. More senseless gun violence destroying lives and families." In addition, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. Now, he's been in the news recently because he did say in a video, along with some other politicians, that military members were allowed to, quote, refuse illegal orders. But he put out, after what happened today, "This is horrific. I'm thinking of the families of these two National Guard members who lost their lives while serving the day before Thanksgiving. Thank you to the first responders who've brought a suspect into custody." Now, his wife, Gabrielle Giffords, was the victim of political violence herself years ago, and she put out, "My heart is with the National Guard members shot and killed near the White House today and their families who are left to grieve the day before Thanksgiving. These shootings are senseless and frequent. They impact everyone. We have to do more." In addition, the mayor, who you heard in the press conference there, she also put something out on X as well, calling the attack on the National Guard members horrific and unconscionable. So a lot of reaction coming in from all corners on social media, and of course also interviews as well, people condemning what happened in Washington, D.C. this afternoon, Scott.
Yeah, Tom, and a tweet now from Jeanine Pirro, U.S. Attorney for D.C., pointing out her sentiments right now. "God bless the two National Guardsmen who have been shot near the White House. As the U.S. Attorney for D.C., I stand ready, as does my office, to seek justice in this case. I am on my way to the scene now." And it is a convergence of every top law enforcement officer, and as you heard Kash Patel, the FBI director there earlier, talking about them bringing full force to bear. I mean, the FBI headquarters is not terribly far away. The Washington field office for the FBI office there as well. So you have a lot of resources very quickly looking into this. Our Christian Flores has been at the scene for several hours now. He has some new information. Christian?
Well, it's still a chaotic scene out here. Just in the last few minutes, police put this new yellow tape here, just kind of keep us a little bit away from the scene. But as far as, scenes, I think the last thing that comes to mind as far as anything like this is when the two staff members from the Israeli embassy were shot and killed quite a few months ago. We spoke with someone who saw the aftermath of the shooting out here. He's been in D.C. for decades. He says the last time he's seen police anything close to this has been 9/11 or shortly after the Oklahoma City bombings, where there was just an increased security presence around the White House and around various other buildings here in D.C. I want to get out of the way, just kind of show you, because you can still see just where all of the investigators from MPD and from federal agencies are gathered. It's a little bit of a tough scene because there are a lot of people out here. We're getting it cleared up now, but you can see just how many people are out here, how many federal investigators, local investigators. There's going to be obviously a partnership. This is going to be going on for quite a while. We've been here for quite a few hours, but you heard from the press conference from FBI Director Kash Patel, as well as MPD Mayor Muriel Bowser, or D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, MPD leaders, saying that this was a lone gunman. still figuring out motive, what exactly led up to this, why this shooter shot these 2 National Guard troops. But they said that this was a targeted attack. This was an ambush. That was coming from the mouth of FBI Director Patel. So obviously still a lot of questions that need to be answered. I spoke with someone from the mayor's office, seeing if there was going to be any other updates. Obviously, it just depends on what happens later tonight. What if the 2 National Guard troops, if their conditions worsen, if there's any updates in the investigation. Keep in mind the suspected shooter is also in the hospital after being shot, so it could still take a while before investigators really get a good idea of what was going through the shooter's mind when the suspected shooter fired his gun at the 2 National Guard troops.
All right, Christian Flores, thank you for that live reporting. We want to go to our Rebecca Turco, and she has some new information about the suspect. Rebecca, you're now hearing that the suspect is actually the one being treated at the hospital where you are, George Washington Hospital.
Yes, I'm just learning that from a D.C. official, and I'm also learning that the 2 National Guard members are being treated at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. And it's worth mentioning that both of those hospitals are level 1 trauma centers. So that means that that's the highest trauma designation. They can treat the most critically ill patients. So all of the victims really are in the best hands that they could be in. We know the 2 National Guard members are in critical condition. That is the last update that we got from that press conference just a little bit earlier. In the meantime, there are still police in the area. There's been kind of a steady stream of police cruisers that have been parked, also that have been circling the area. And I'd imagine over at MedStar, it's a lot of the same situation. So again, we are working to get updates on current conditions, but at last check, both National Guard members remain in critical condition. Michelle, Scott.
Yeah, you talk about the quick response by medical personnel on this one as well. U.S. Park Police had pushed out an alert about an hour ago explaining their role, and they said they responded to the scene of the shooting today at 17th and I Street Northwest, secured a landing zone near the Washington Monument, and transported one of the victims to a local hospital by U.S. Park Police Aviation. So, you know, we've said it before, we'll say it again, it was an all-hands-on-deck situation in Washington, D.C. today.
And we understand it's that transport that required DCA to have that ground stop that impacted a number of flights and caused some delays. DCA saying now that service is back to normal, but you definitely want to check the flight schedule to make sure your flight is on time if you're expecting a loved one to arrive for the holiday.
Yeah, more reaction continues to come into the newsroom as we give you another look at this live scene. And for those who are joining us now, as we reset a little bit here in the 5:30 part of the evening here, if you are just tuning in, a terrible situation in downtown Washington, D.C. 2 National Guard members out on what's called a high visibility patrol, meaning they're out there just to be seen, deter crime, be helpful in whatever way they can, were ambushed, according to the mayor and according to the FBI director. They were on patrol near 17th and I Street. A lone gunman, according to law enforcement officials, turned the corner, raised his arm, and shot at least 2 bullets, hitting both of those National Guard members before there was some sort of exchange of gunfire, at least 1 shot fired, if not more, by a soldier, from what the Associated Press sources are telling them, to help subdue the suspect in this case. And now, as you see before you on this video, crime scene tape everywhere around that section of Farragut Park near the Farragut North Metro Station. And it will be a very long investigation, and everyone in the meantime thinking about these 2 National Guard members who are listed in critical condition, according to Rebecca Turco. Let's get over to Victoria Sanchez with new information.
Well, we are keeping track on exactly what is happening with the 2 National Guards members. Once we get that update, I will let you know. But for our viewers who are either not from the D.C. area, or if you're watching us streaming on WJLA.com, I just want to give you a scene of what it looks like in D.C. right now with the National Guard members. So right now, this is what it looks like. But if you're walking around the Farragut West Metro stop, where this happened. You are going to see National Guard members in their uniforms walking around in at least pairs. When I've gone out, I've seen them in 4, 5, 6 people to a group, but you will never see them alone. They'll be in pairs, and that is not only for their protection, but then for also so people can see that they are patrolling the area. The 2 National Guard members that were shot earlier today, they were armed, and they are allowed to be armed when the National Guard came to D.C. in mid-August. About a week after that, they were given authority to carry pistols for their safety. Now, we do not know who shot the lone gunman, that one suspect who ambushed the 2 National Guard members, but we do know that there were other National Guard members with the 2 victims at this time. So for those of you just joining us, the 2 National Guard members that were shot point blank in an ambush is what we're being told. They are in critical condition at the hospital right now. And as our Rebecca Turco said, they're both at Trauma 1 centers, which is the highest level. They have the best doctors, the best equipment to give them the best shot at recovering. Scott and Michelle.
Yeah, the Washington field office of the FBI, which is essentially their largest non-headquartered office in our area, and it's right down there, not too far from the National Building Museum. They posted on social media that they're working with our law enforcement partners to investigate the shooting, obviously, that we've been speaking about all afternoon, but that they don't have any further details beyond what we heard from Kash Patel. But that is, if you want an investigative agency, a group of men and women who excel perhaps better than anyone at investigating cases of domestic terrorism, which some have already termed this. We heard that during that news conference today. Those are the ones. They are the most experienced, so they will be, we can assure you, hours into already looking into the gunman's background and trying to determine exactly what led up to this just terrible event that has now taken over Washington, D.C. And as you hear sirens still blaring, it's going to be a very long night for these investigators, a much longer and more difficult night for the National Guardsmen community, worried about 2 of their own.
We're seeing more reaction come in, this time from Secretary Brooke Rollins. She oversees the Agriculture Department. Here's a part of what she says. The men and women of our National Guard show up day after day with courage and an unwavering commitment to protect our communities. Their work often goes unseen, but its impact is felt by every single one of us who sleeps a little easier because they stand watch. What happened today is heartbreaking. An attack on those who dedicate their lives to safeguarding others is an attack on all of us.
Yeah, so we're going to continue to give you this live look on the scene. You've heard from our reporters, Tristan Flores, who has talked to eyewitnesses. We also heard from a couple of eyewitnesses, including a former photographer of 7 News who now works over at ABC Network and was in the area covering the White House as he does on his daily duties. Described just kind of the chaos, but you hear those loud noises, and there was some confusion whether or not it was gunshots. There's always construction down there in that area, and the metal plates as they're driven over can make loud booming noises, and so some didn't understand what exactly was taking place in those immediate moments. As we now give you a live look there at MedStar Hospital, MedStar Washington Hospital Center, where treatment is underway for these National Guard members who very quickly had work being done on them. I just want to allude again to the interview with the former photographer, because he saw work being done very quickly on at least one of the Guard members with chest compressions as they were trying to keep that member alive until they could get him or her into the hands of trained professionals here.
And we want to reiterate, those guardmen are in critical condition. There was some conflicting reporting earlier on, as there often is when there is a developing story. But the confirmation that we got from the FBI and the mayor is that those 2 National Guard troops are being cared for. They're in critical condition after being ambushed.
Now, we've not heard yet directly in person, or at least in front of the cameras, from President Trump. He is expected to make some sort of remarks or statement. We know that. He did push out on social media over an hour ago, perhaps. He said the animal that shot the 2 National Guardsmen while both being critically wounded and now in 2 separate hospitals is also severely wounded. but regardless, we'll pay a very steep price. God bless our great National Guard and all of our military and law enforcement. These are truly great people, and I, as President of the United States, and everyone associated with the office of the presidency, am with you. We did hear from Vice President J.D. Vance, who sent out his thoughts and prayers as well, and assured us that that all resources will be brought to bear in pursuing this case. But that's where we stand as far as reaction goes. Now it is a matter of the health of these two National Guard members and determining what we can learn in this early stage about the gunman. There have been some photos and videos that have circulated the internet. We are not showing any of those until we have confirmation that they are accurate, that show a little bit of the immediate aftermath and what appeared to be a scuffle as he was subdued, the gunman, and then perhaps being loaded into an ambulance. But again, we want to be careful because there is a lot of misinformation that is being pushed around, and we don't want to repeat anything that we cannot confirm on our own. It is perhaps paramount to report, as was reported in that news conference, if you missed it earlier, that it was a lone gunman, that they were able to take advantage of video cameras in the area to confirm that. They could watch the movements, see that this person was acting alone, and then instantly consider this scene relatively secure until they could tamp down every other concern they've got.
I want to share more reaction coming in the wake of the shooting. House Speaker Mike Johnson sharing the National Guard has done heroic work this year, working around the clock to make our nation's capital safe again. We are forever grateful for the swift actions of law enforcement and for all those who risk their own lives to protect everyone else. And we also heard from Democratic leadership, Chuck Schumer, saying, "My heart breaks for the victims of this horrific shooting in Washington, D.C. near the White House. I am closely monitoring the situation and am praying for the wounded National Guardsmen and their families. I thank all the first responders for their quick action to capture the suspect." Also seeing some reporting from CNN saying that the suspect is not cooperating with investigators. So that is some new information that we're learning about their interactions after being taken into custody, that he is not cooperating with them.
Yeah, and an interesting development there as well. And, you know, we continue to bring you some of this reaction from people, but the most poignant or perhaps insightful ones sometimes come from those closest to this political violence, if that's what this is, but closest to violence themselves. Steve Scalise, congressman from Louisiana, who, if you recall, not far from this scene in Alexandria on a softball field in the Del Rey neighborhood, was shot in an act of political violence. And he posted just in the past hour, "My heart breaks for the two National Guard heroes who were shot in D.C. today. We are praying for them and their families. Such a tragic, senseless act of violence. We stand with the West Virginia National Guard and urge swift justice for this evil act." But whether it is Steve Scalise or whether it's Gabrielle Giffords or any of these other members of Congress or people in the political circle who they themselves have been targeted and indeed shot, it further illustrates the point that there is a dramatic call whenever these things happen for people to lower the pressure and lower the heat that we are feeling across this nation right now.
And we know this will be prosecuted as a federal case. We heard from FBI Director Kash Patel saying, since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal law enforcement officer. So they are looking to, I guess you could say, press the strongest charges possible given the nature of this heinous act.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I think FBI Director Patel was trying to explain is that because it is against federal law enforcement officers, there perhaps will be other charges that can be brought to the courts on this one. But Janine Pirro chiming in, saying that they're on the way to the scene, her team, and already actively getting ready to figure out exactly what they can put together. But that is all in the future. I mean, in the immediacy, we are most focusing on these two Guard members. And Felicia Ashley has given us some good reporting about their role in Washington, D.C. since August, because it has been contentious to some There are plenty of people who did not like the National Guard being here in the city. We don't know if that's the case as to why this person acted the way they did, talking about the gunman. But nonetheless, as Michelle, as you've pointed out, this is a struggle that's been going on in cities across the country right now, where there is a lot of pushback from some, others welcoming them with open arms, but about sending the National Guard, as the president would like, to multiple cities to try and, what he says, cut down on crime. I was in Portland, Oregon just earlier this month reporting on some of the pushback there, as members didn't like the idea, members of the political parties there didn't like the idea of the National Guard coming in. But Memphis, Chicago, there are plenty of other places where there's a genuine debate, and you can only imagine that that debate is going to get much stronger and intensify over the next few days. And then the quick reaction from Pete Hegseth over at the Pentagon, the Secretary of War, to say, okay, we're sending 500 more National Guard into Washington, D.C. in light of what just happened, shows you that there certainly won't be a scaling back.
Yeah, and there's a question of whether that will agitate more incidents like this. We don't know. But that is something that we will be following in the days ahead. But right now, top of mind is this investigation with this case playing out in downtown D.C. Our Christian Flores standing by. Christian, you have new information for us?
Keep it on. Just want to kind of take you back to what we're looking at right now. I mean, again, it's just an absolutely packed scene still several hours later. I mean, look, we've been talking about it pretty much throughout the entire afternoon. We're so close to the White House. You're used to seeing just more amped up police presence and security presence around this area. But of course, you have a shooting, and not just a shooting, but a shooting targeting 2 National Guard troops. And it's just going to be amped up to 11. I mean, earlier this afternoon, we spoke with someone who saw the aftermath. He didn't see the shooting, but he saw the aftermath, all the first responders rushed to the scene, people, trying to get some help to the scene. And he said he hasn't seen a police presence like this since really 9/11. And he's been here for a number of decades. Now, obviously, those are going to be very, very different levels of police presence, but it just kind of paints a picture of just how many people were out here responding quickly to the scene. And we heard it from the FBI director, Casualty, earlier, that this could have been a much worse tragedy, according to him, because this is such a busy area, not just for people who are working here, but is the tourist destination. I mean, this is the White House. So, I want to just, again, show you just what we're seeing out here, where you see all of the federal officers, MPD officers that are just gathered here on the scene. That man we spoke to, he's been here for a number of decades. He has a restaurant just nearby here, and just saw some of he called it bedlam in the moments after that shooting. And we've been hearing from witnesses pretty much throughout the entire afternoon, really relaying a lot of the same things. They're saying that it was just a lot of chaos, people rushing to the scene. FBI Director Patel saying that when the shooting happened, there were still a number of other National Guard troops in the area that heard the gunshots. You had D.C. police officers in the area. They were able to subdue the suspect until they were able to take that suspected shooter to the hospital. Now, that suspect was also shot. That's something that might also obviously get in the way and slow down some of the investigation, trying to question him, trying to get a better idea of the motives. But this is something that we're going to keep our eyes out for, because as we know right now, the 2 National Guard troops who were shot are in critical condition. As soon as we get an update on their condition, we'll be sure to let you know.
Good overview of the situation as you see it right now. Christian, thank you. Our special breaking news coverage continues. Joining us now is Matthew Dalek. He's a professor of political management at the George Washington University. Professor, thank you so much for jumping on with us today. You're an expert.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're an expert on the National Guard's role in domestic affairs. How do you suspect something like what we saw play out today will impact that role?
Well, it's very hard to know. This is obviously a tragedy and really horrific. The Guard in D.C. apparently has come from many different states, not just West Virginia, but South Carolina, North Carolina. Some members patrolling here are from Washington, D.C. I read recently that in the past hour that the administration is going to send an additional 500 troops to Washington. It's unclear what the purpose of that would be for. But it's very hard to know what the motivation is for this. or actually going to lead to a drawdown. And we're just going to have to see.
Yeah, Matthew, I know that that's an impact that we are going to wait and see. We did hear from the Pentagon that they're going to send 500 more right away. Could you see this shooting changing anything in terms of deployments in other cities, not just here in Washington, D.C.?
Well, look, the fear, which I guess has come to pass, is that you deploy troops against the wishes of people in the cities, the governors and mayors in states and cities, and it amps up the friction, right? It creates a greater degree of tension, and that the troops, the Guard, becomes, again, horrifically, but becomes a kind of target. And I don't know. My guess is that there is a very real chance that the administration will take this this terrible event and put more troops in Washington, more troops in more cities, at least in the short term. And it's not even clear exactly what their purpose is, or what greater deployments would do. But it certainly creates an opening for the administration if they decide they want to ramp up troop deployments, they want to crack down in some way. It certainly gives them a kind of justification for doing something like that.
Matthew, I'm wondering how much of a factor do you believe it is in determining a motive in this case? We don't have that just yet, in figuring out the next steps of the administration and whether they will have the public support for those next steps.
The extent that we can figure it out will be important. A lot of times in these targeted shootings, the shooter is mentally unwell, and it may be hard to kind of distill exactly their motives, but I think it will create a kind of narrative one way or the other. And to be honest, I think different sides, whether people support or oppose these National Guard deployments, different sides are going to use whatever information comes out to push their, to their advantage, right? They're going to push their narrative about whether this means that the Guard should not be here or whether there should be more Guard troops. So I guess my concern is that it's going to further fracture this already really difficult debate. And then the last thing I would say is that it's not clear how popular these National Guard deployments are. I haven't seen any recent polling, but I haven't seen a groundswell of support from the American people for the deployment of these Guard troops. And, in the cities where they are being deployed, I think that, most residents are opposed to having them there. So I assume this is going to remain a very controversial issue for the days and weeks ahead.
Let's look at this from maybe a 30,000-foot view here for a second, because you led right into that next question about the political climate. We're already seeing, and social media can, of course, be just a bastion for this sort of thing, but we're already seeing a blame being assessed for how people either view the National Guard or how people view an order by the president, a directive that brought them here in the first place, and whether or not they've been vilified. And then, of course, political sides, the lines being drawn pretty distinctly. We are, by anyone who's been in Washington, D.C. a long time, at a pretty fragile state as far as the political division. What do you make of it, regardless of this shooting? Where are we right now when it comes to the temperature in D.C.?
Yeah, well, I think the temperature in the city itself, and I live here, I think it is more fraught, and it has been generally more fraught. I see reports, for example, of ICE raids and National Guard troops on my campus, on the George Washington University campus. I think that there's a fear, especially among more vulnerable populations in Washington, I think if we step back as well, it's important to note that if this indeed was a targeted shooting, if it was an act of politically motivated violence, I think, you know, it's another kind of terrible moment in just an ongoing series of moments, right? Another horrific act and a kind of cycle of political violence, if you will. And of course, violence, acts of political violence, tend to beget more violence, right? Whether that's violence coming from the state or violence coming from an individual against the state, other kinds of violence, right? This kind of bloodshed does not typically result in people coming together and saying, let's all get along. I think it inflames people further, radicalizes people.
To start off with.
Professor Matthew Dallek, thank you so much from George Washington University for joining us tonight to discuss this breaking story for us.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate your perspective.
All right, let's get over to Tom Rousey, who's got some new information as we continue to watch everything unfold here. Tom?
Yeah, of course, Scott and Michelle, this happening on what is a very busy travel day for Thanksgiving. A lot of folks in town who wouldn't normally be, a lot of folks leaving town for Thanksgiving trips. So we've been monitoring the impact on that. First off, if you can avoid downtown Washington, folks have been asked to stay away. If you look on this map right here, basically all these parts here, a huge part of 17th Street, parts of H Street, large part of I Street, parts of K Street as well, all shut down, even little part out here on Pennsylvania Avenue. So basically areas to the west and to the north of the White House, that's where a lot of the activity is concentrated, and a lot of the roads are shut down in that area. So don't even think about trying to drive anywhere nearby if you can at all avoid it. But even as a pedestrian, this area is best avoided unless you absolutely have to be there. Now, this shooting, of course, happened very close to one of the entrances to the Farragut West Metro station and 17th and I Street, which is right about where the shooting happened. That entrance to that station is closed. However, there's another entrance on 18th Street. That one is still open, and the metro system has been running as normal during this time. There's just that one change of that entrance being closed. You can't go in or out there. Now, also, this actually affected flights at Reagan National Airport for a time because there was actually a ground stop for security reasons. They were doing in kind of an abundance of caution shortly after the shooting of the National Guard's troops happened, and as a result, the delays increased at Reagan National. Right now, for the entire day, according to FlightAware, there have been 252 delays in or out of Reagan National. That number has been growing over the past couple hours since the shooting happened. I'm told flights resumed about 3:45 in the afternoon, but of course, anytime there's a disruption to flight traffic, especially on a very, very busy travel day like today, it does have a lingering impact. So there have been several hundred delays at Reagan National today, but overall, things are moving okay there, considering. Back to you, Scott and Michelle.
Yeah, big repercussions all around as a result of this.
Yeah, and I'm just seeing here that in the last few minutes, President Trump and his administration has filed an emergency motion to keep the National Guard in D.C. The Trump administration today asking a federal appeals court for an emergency stay of last week's order from a federal judge to remove the National Guard from Washington, D.C. You may remember last week a district judge ruled that the president's deployment of the National Guard in the Capitol was unlawful. So now we're seeing some of that legal fighting that we were discussing earlier. The president now asking for a stay on that order to keep National Guard troops in the district.
Yeah, because if I recall correctly, that order from that judge last week had a 21-day window afterward, knowing that appeals would come. And you can only imagine, as we're now hearing, that appeal will be very strong from this White House. Kash Patel speaking about all of this, the FBI director. Let's listen in.
Two of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice.
Approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the D.C. National Guard were on high visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest. when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring them into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital.
I've had the opportunity to brief U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was speaking to the president when I called, as well as the United States Attorney Pirro, who assured me that this case will have her office's complete attention.
The individual, the suspect, came around the corner. He immediately started firing a firearm at the two National Guard members. So at that time, there were other National Guard members that were in gunfire. They actually were able to intervene and to kind of hold down the suspect after he had been shot on the ground until law enforcement got there within moments.
What we know, Andrea, is that this is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen, that individual has been taken into custody.
It clearly tears at you. You know, this is something nobody wishes to have happen, especially this is a domestic terrorist. And this is something that you just don't want to have happen or even dream to think happen, and it has. And so being close to it, seeing it, it's a conversation that's going to be happening at the tables tomorrow, especially in the DMV. You don't want to have to start the holiday season with, my God, what happened yesterday?
7 News on your side at 6 starts now. We begin with a breaking news alert.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We've got an update right now at 6 o'clock on that breaking news out of Washington, D.C. 2 National Guardsmen in critical condition after what federal and local officials are calling an ambush and targeted shooting.
And tonight we've been bringing you wall-to-wall coverage of this breaking news for hours now. So let's get to our team coverage right now at 6 o'clock, starting off with Christian Flores, our first reporter who was at the scene this afternoon. Christian, what are you seeing right now?
Well, as you can tell from the police lights and the on-again, off-again sirens, I'm sure you've been hearing from our live pictures throughout the afternoon and evening, just an absolutely massive police presence, even relative to what we normally are accustomed to this close to the White House. I kind of want to give you an idea of just the scale of the scene that we're seeing here. Just take a quick walk with me. Just on the other side of the block, we're right by Farragut Square. You can just see even down here, you see even more police lights. But I want to take you back to where we first began, just because you can get a better idea of just all of the Secret Service police that are out here. They have this taped off of cars coming out. We've been seeing that periodically through the night. And down there you can see there are just a lot more investigators, both from federal agencies and MPD out here on scene. It looks like a tow truck just got here as well. Still waiting to see what exactly happened there. But we just got an update a little more than an hour ago from FBI Director Kash Patel, as well as DC Mayor Muriel Bowser and MPD leaders, about what exactly happened out here. And this was what they say was an ambush, a targeted attack by a lone shooter. He came around the corner and allegedly shot these 2 National Guard troops, those 2 National Guard troops still fighting for their lives in the hospital. The suspect was also shot. It's unclear who shot the suspect, but what we were told was that there were other National Guard troops here. They were out here as part of their normal patrols. There are also DC police officers out here, and they heard the gunshots and were able to subdue the suspect. It's still unclear who exactly shot the suspect, but take a listen to what we heard from that press conference from law enforcement leaders and city leaders earlier this evening.
To get to that video and that sound in just Christian, thank you. We're going to hear from those eyewitnesses in just a bit. In the meantime, though, I want to show you this. This is some video that was shot from a rooftop overlooking Farragut Square, and it shows the emergency response to today's shooting. Gives you a little bit better of an idea of the huge federal and local response to this shooting. Many National Guard members also responding in those earliest moments of the investigation to find the person who shot their fellow service members.
And this right here is a live look now at the hospital where the National Guard members are being treated right now. MedStar Washington Hospital Center is where you're looking at there. Again, both are in critical condition. Lots of conflicting reports earlier today, but we do know that right now, both of the victims are still alive, fighting for their lives, listed in critical condition after they were targeted in today's shooting. 7 News' Rebecca Turco picks up our team coverage. She is live for us outside GW Hospital in Northwest. Rebecca, we're learning that is where the suspect is being treated.
Yeah, so what are you learning at this hour, Rebecca?
Yes, well, yes, we are learning from a D.C. official that the suspect is being treated here. And really, that could be why we're seeing such police presence in this area. We've seen police coming and going, everything from Metro Transit to Metropolitan Police. There's even a Secret Service cruiser in the area as well. So it has been a busy few hours here outside the hospital. And want to also mention, too, that both of the hospitals where all 3 people are being treated, they're both level 1 trauma centers. Now, what that means, that is the highest level designation for treating trauma that a hospital can have. So these are the hospitals that can treat the most complex injuries coming in. So again, as you mentioned, we know from officials from that earlier press conference, both National Guard members are in critical condition tonight, but they are in level 1 trauma center. They are in the best hands they could be in. And certainly if we get any more updates on their condition, we're going to bring you those updates as soon as we get them. For now, back to you.
Thank you, and we want to continue our team coverage now of this breaking news with our Washington, D.C. reporter, Felicia Ashley.
Yeah, Felicia, the shooting happening in a very busy area on a day when many people actually are off right ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday, so there could have been more bystanders there, but I know you're hearing from some witnesses.
That's right, because as you mentioned, we're the day before Thanksgiving. This is a popular tourist area and local area as well. We're right in front of Farragut Square. I also do want to pause for a sec because we're seeing some of the investigators just pass right behind us going through some of the crime scene tape, and they're going to head towards that corner over there. As I mentioned earlier, that seemed to be a focus area, and what we learned is that that is where the Metro stop is. So that has been a focus for a lot of the investigators, a lot of the law enforcement, what they're looking for, what they're actually investigating. That's still what we're pushing to find out. But as you mentioned, yes, there were a lot of people out here. In addition to that, we had a moment to speak with some of them, and this is what they heard and saw.
I was in the Uber, I heard boom, boom, twice. I was looking at my cell phone, and the Uber driver said, "Why are all these people running?" So then I looked out the window, and it was little children. They looked probably about 5 years old on both sides of the street running, and adults. And whoever was supervising the children said, "Go, run." Then I heard someone yell, "Help, help," in the direction of the shooting. But I didn't see who yelled help. I don't know if it was an individual who was shot or someone yelling for help.
Like pop. Could have been a steel plate or something. There's a lot of construction and things going around. So I just thought that maybe it was some plates going on or something like that. But then boom. And you start starting to hand these big guns. I'm like, okay, this is something's going on. So people at first were a little shocked. They just thought, like, is that construction? And so some people kind of jogged a little bit, and then when those big booms started happening, people started crying out like, "Yo, this is a little bit serious. This is shooting. There's something bad going on." So immediately I went forward to see what was going on, and as you see in the video, I see 2 National Guard members down, and people were working on them, providing first aid.
Very simple word, bedlam. The chaos that ensued on both sides of K Street, all the way from between the 2 metros, was just a rush of, excitement and fear, with people running away from the scene, and then the police coming on there, and then multiple, departments, Secret Service, Park Police, MPD, all coming to the scene to address the issue, and then the ambulances, of course. And then just the buildup of curiosity watching, and then the expansion of the crime scene to, continue the investigation. Honestly, since I used to work at the White House, not since the Oklahoma bombing have I seen a heightened sense of security, and then with 9/11, this is pretty much equal to that level. It's, obviously it warrants the importance of being here and doing what they have to do, the due diligence with the investigation. But nonetheless, here we go again. We're, we're dealing with unfortunate situation that we have to embrace and work through and hopefully understand and move forward.
You heard one of the witnesses talk about the chaos and the response. You can still see some of that behind me within this crime scene. You also heard one witness reference this as an unfortunate circumstance and situation that happened, and that too already rippling through the community because they say this is a moment none of them wanted to ever have to witness or experience. When I spoke with community members throughout the months of the presence here, many of them saying that it's been positive, and those even maybe not in support saying they have appreciated seeing them and what they've been doing. But for now, reporting live from Northwest D.C. Felicia Ashley, 7 News. Back to you.
Yeah, all right, Felicia, and just a jammed packed Washington, D.C., 2 in the afternoon. So obviously a lot of witnesses to that very scary incident unfolding again, not far at all from the White House.
Tom Rousey is on the alert desk for us with the latest on the traffic situation around the scene near Farragut Metro Station. What are you seeing now, Tom?
Yeah, and of course a lot of people taking the Metro tonight for the Capitals game just to go to downtown Washington for the Thanksgiving holiday. Police are asking you to avoid the area where this happened near the Farragut West Metro Station. A lot of roads are closed in that area, about 4 blocks of 17th Street, according to D.C. police, a portion of Connecticut Avenue as well, also parts of K Street, parts of I Street, parts of H Street. Basically a lot of street closures just to the west and to the north of the area of the White House. And of course this happening only about 10 blocks from the arena where that Capitals game will be going on tonight. Also there's the Christmas market in that area. So certainly it's a night some people are headed to downtown Washington. The Metro is still operating almost entirely as normal. There's only one difference, and that is the 17th and I entrance of the Farragut West Station is closed. That's very close to where this shooting happened. So you can't go in or out there, but you can still get in on the 18th Street side of that Metro station. Blue, orange, silver, still running as normal, Metro says. That's the latest update we've heard from them. And as we've mentioned before, this actually did impact the airports as well. They had a brief ground stop, but although there's been a number of delays, things operating relatively smoothly there, Scott.
Yeah, and that ground stop because U.S. Park Police helicopter transporting one of the victims, landing a helicopter actually right near the Washington Monument. Let's get over to Victoria Sanchez now. She's got to look at some reaction from West Virginia officials.
Yeah, Scott, the governor of West Virginia posted on X several times this afternoon giving updates on the chaotic situation. Some of that information did change, as we've told you, but what did stay consistent, many offering prayers to the service members. One post from the West Virginia governor read in part, quote, "Our prayers are with these brave service members, their families, and the extraordinary men and women of our Guard who put themselves on the line every day. West Virginia stands united behind them." I have that retweeted on my social media accounts. We also heard from the West Virginia Attorney General, who spoke just a short time ago.
I am enraged, if I'm being completely honest, and I think one of the things that should be noted here is that all 160 of those Guards members who were in D.C. today had volunteered their time over the Thanksgiving holiday to help complete this mission. And something about West Virginia that most people don't know is that we have the highest per capita military involvement of any state in the country. And we have a long history of men and women willing to stand up for our country and serve our country. And so what this perpetrator needs to understand is that he has attacked 2 of the bravest people in this country that come from the bravest state in this country.
And this is a live look outside MedStar Washington Hospital, where those 2 service members are being treated right now. And I want to give you some context behind what's happening here. I looked up some statistics from the Department of Justice. Now, last year in 2024, 266 law enforcement officers were shot in the line of duty. 62 of those were ambush-style attacks, where officers were shot without warning and had no chance to defend themselves. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says that's exactly what happened to the 2 National Guardsmen this afternoon. Michelle and Scott.
Victoria, thank you. Shortly after the shooting, President Trump issued a statement on Truth Social that reads in part, quote, "God bless our great National Guard and all of our military and law enforcement. These are truly great people."
The president is in Florida right now, so he wasn't at the White House during all this. Left last night to head down for the holiday. No word yet on whether or not he will return to D.C. early. We can certainly expect to hear more from him soon, we would imagine. And once we do, we'll let you know when we have a new statement or some sort of appearance in front of the cameras. Now, earlier this afternoon, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth also spoke about the shooting.
Yeah, he says hundreds more National Guard troops will be sent to D.C.
Very productive meetings, but I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that 2 National Guardsmen have been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America, heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met, because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not, because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army, to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful.
A really big, busy news day. We're going to continue to keep you updated on WJLA.com as well as our 7 News app.
We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be right back. .617 now, and thank you for joining us for this extensive breaking news coverage.
Yeah, welcome back to our audience. We're continuing to monitor the breaking news out of D.C., where 2 National Guard members were critically hurt in a shooting. The suspect in this tragedy is in custody.
A lot of new developments happening, but we do know that it's also a really busy week for a lot of families, a lot of people traveling. So we're going to check in quickly with Chief Meteorologist Veronica Johnson. She's got to look at the weather before we get another update from our Christian Flores. VJ.
Department. So today 72 degrees, the high temperature. That was really warm for this time of the year. It's a 50-degree temperature drop as we get into Friday morning. Feeling like 23. It's why we've got the cold alert posted. It's going to come from colder air moving in and windy conditions. You can see the wind advisories up already. Western Allegheny County, Garrett County, portions of Mineral County. This will be until 11 a.m. Thursday. And even outside of that area with winds at 50 miles per hour, our wind gusts tomorrow will be around 30 to 35 miles per hour. Right now, some of the highest winds here, Hagerstown and Martinsburg, already around 32, 44 mile per hour wind gusts. As this cold front moves through, the next weather maker for us, that'll be Sunday, and then another one Tuesday. This is the one that could bring a wintry mix with rain and some wet snowflakes that will start to mix in. But it is quiet tonight in terms of any precipitation, 32 to 36 degrees. We're partly cloudy, windy, and colder. And your Thanksgiving day for tomorrow, it will be temperatures at 46 degrees, feeling like we're in the 30s, and then on Friday itself, even colder air, 20s and 30s. It's why we've got the cold alert up. There's your rain starting late morning Sunday, continuing through the evening. We're back after the short break.
Two National Guard troops are in critical condition right now after a shooting near the White House. We have been bringing you wall-to-wall coverage all evening on this breaking news.
And new details continue to come out. We want to go back to our Christian Flores. He's been on the scene of this shooting since the news broke just after 2 o'clock this afternoon. Christian, we understand there's some new activity at the scene. Give us an update.
Yeah, about 20 minutes ago, I pointed out that there was a tow truck at the end of the scene. It might be a little tough because there's an MPD officer leaving the scene right now, but we want to zoom in at the end of this block where you see this tow truck. And we were wondering why exactly is a tow truck here? Is it to take away a vehicle? But it's actually here because it brought in some lights. If we zoom out a little bit, show you these lights. It brought in these lights, and that's interesting because it's obviously out here to light up the scene to get a better look for evidence that they need to be collected. So it kind of gives us a better idea just how much longer for the investigators are planning to be out here. It could be an all-night type of deal. No surprise, because again, it's two National Guard troops who were shot, who are fighting for their lives and are in critical condition at local hospitals. We were told that a suspect, a lone shooter, just came around the corner and fired at these two National Guard troops. They're still working out on a motive. I imagine that's why the lights are out here, just to make sure they get absolutely every bit of evidence out here on the scene. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel saying that this was a targeted attack on these two National Guard troops, but they were out here already on patrol, and so were other National Guard troops, as well as D.C. police. And he said that the actions, the very swift actions of the other law enforcement officers and the troops that were out on scene are the reason this wasn't any worse. Take a listen to what we heard from all the law enforcement leaders that were out here at the press conference about an hour or so ago.
At approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the D.C. National Guard were on high visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring them into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital.
Yeah, again, just a staggering but really unsurprising amount of law enforcement presence that's out here on the scene, just because, again, the gravity of this crime where you have two National Guard troops who were targeted and shot and, again, are just fighting for their lives in the hospital just a day before Thanksgiving. So, obviously, that light being brought in, these investigators are really going to want to make sure they get everything they can at the scene. So they could be here all night long. We're still waiting on a bit of a timeline, but as far as road closures, as you can imagine, pretty much all the roads down here in downtown D.C. leading up to the scene are going to be closed, so I'll just stay away. So back to you in the studio.
As we talk about looking forward into the evening, we know that the evidence recovery is not just there on scene on streets, but that law enforcement individuals are going to be looking at every bit of video they can to track the suspect before this shooting, where he came from and what he may have done leading up to those terrible moments. So a lot of work to do ahead.
Yeah, our city being one of the most surveilled in the country or even in the world. Tens of thousands of CCTV cameras and footage potentially to reveal evidence in terms of what happened before this tragedy. We thank you so much for trusting us and joining us for this extensive breaking news coverage.
We'll see you back here at 11 o'clock and over on WJLA 24/7 at 10 o'clock with the very latest on all of this. In the meantime, we will hand it over to our news partners at ABC World News Tonight right now.